That'll be nice.
Sounds
Boy,
like
that,
a lot of debris.
Yeah.
Talking debris.
Yeah,
a lot of traffic coming.
yeah,
through
there
now.
would be just north of where they built the,
Like we went to Sioux City
built
last
the
night
dam.
Oh,
and, got to take this long circuitous.
yeah.
How are you? Back. Good.
With many other people, I assume, I bet.
You go down the Nebraska side?
So they had me go, out 20 and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
over to 12
Yes.
and then 15 and then like,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's where there's a lot of traffic coming on 12.
yeah. Zach chooses to come that way pretty often.
but it is pretty.
Yeah.
It's really pretty, but it's not fast. Let me tell you, I was pretty tired of it.
Most of the. Down there.
That adapter doesn't work very well. Things were good, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I spent-
How do you like this setup? I kind of helped spot it yesterday. Is there,
We may have to
main
go-
thing, is there enough room for you?
It's tight, but we may have to go that way a little bit.
Yeah.
I was thinking about rotating this way a little bit.
That'll work too.
That might not be
Uh,
bad.
It's then.
Carrie's kind of facing a little.
And we set it this way because this, our contractor is pretty insistent things should be square. And this surface here is parallel with the wall. But I'm thinking that if we rotated that way a little bit, it'd give you some more room and we would face the audience a little better too. But
I think we still need to go that way, because otherwise if you rotate it, Jeffrey's gonna be right
yeah,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I don't think we rotate it that much, we rotate so that that corner is out.
Like pivoting on the corner back by Carrie over there?
It would go about one tile and this would
Good.
just swing around. That should give you both.
Right. We all ready?
Yep.
Then I'll call the meeting to order and we'll begin with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mochler,
Here.
Graylow,
Here.
Smith, here, Easy,
Here.
Hammond.
Here. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none, would somebody like to approve the agenda? And
Move to approve.
I think we might have
Second.
one addition. Is there a declaration?
Oh, it's already on there.
It's already on.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, great.
And then there was something else. Somebody sent you something. Did Andy Schultz send you something yesterday?
Yeah, Schultz.
And we can do it for the next meeting too. That'd be fine. That's just next week.
All right,
So-
so there's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Are there any visitors to be heard for an item that's not on the agenda? Linnea,
Melissa and I both had the pleasure of being introduced to you on our second day. I let Chris get away for 2 months without saying hi. So this is Chris Ridley. He's my new hire. And hello.
Welcome, Chris. Thank you. Yeah.
welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Any other visitors to be heard? All right, then we'll go on to the first item on the agenda, which is the Clay County Fair Board discussion of relocation of the fairgrounds. And it's Katie. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this a short discussion. My name is Katie Heine and I am representing the Fair Board Future of Fairgrounds Steering Committee. And I have just 2 clarifications we would like back from the commissioners. You may know that our steering committee has started the process of relocation opportunities, kind of a SWOT study that has been started in 2018. And so what we would like from the commissioners is to know if the commissioners are going to support whatever decision that we make as a steering committee, either to stay and invest in our current location or to start the process of relocating to a destination of our choosing. The second part of that question is, can we presume that 20 to 40 acres at the Clay County Rodeo Grounds is a viable option for the new location of the Clay County Fairgrounds? That's,
So, great questions.
thank you.
I've been trying to go to as many of those meetings as I can, and I think you guys are having really productive discussions. And I've been impressed with how deep everybody's digging into some hard challenges, and everybody seems to be really pragmatic about the expenses that are involved with all the different options that you're looking at. So I think in general, I'm excited to hear what direction you guys choose. Of course, support means a lot of things in different contests. So if it's a dollar amount of support, then, I think that that's something that, of course, we're going to have to discuss. But in a general sense, I'm excited that you guys are working hard on that and trying to be proactive about it. I'm currently the commission's appointee to the Clay County Park Board, and we have had some tentative discussions over there about the possibility that the fairgrounds might move, and that whether that there might be some way to have a partnership between maybe the rodeo and the fairground, and that might be mutually beneficial to both. So those discussions have been begun in a very general sense, because we don't have any details on that end. But at this point, I haven't heard any pushback from any of the other fair board members. So
Thank you.
Other comments?
park board members, I apologize.
Yeah.
Misspoke, yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting proposal, and we do own that land. And I would think that the value of the land would be a big part of the county's contribution to this thing. But money's the big issue, of course.
Is that the site you've settled on?
Sure.
We have not made it a permanent decision. When we do make that decision, we would like to know who owns that decision. So, and we would like for the steering committee to be the owner of the decision, and for the county commission to say, yep, sounds good.
I'd encourage you, if you'd like to come, we do, the park board does have monthly meetings. So if you guys think you're at the point where you might be ready to come and try and open a discussion with the park board directly, I encourage you to do so. It's a great body. I've really enjoyed working with them the last year and a half, and a lot of reasonable people on there. Will Kennedy has taken over kind of the reins of the rodeo part of things. So the rodeo is kind of a funny child of the park board. It's not a 501c3. It's just sort of an offshoot of us, but it's also one of the cores of the park's history and of the park site, and it's utilized year round right now. But I think that if you're interested in coming to one of the meetings, they'd love to have you. So yep.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Other
I-
comments?
My opinion on this is I need a plan,
Mhm.
for sport. I am gonna support a plan that is viable and that you guys have researched and present. I'm all for supporting that, and I'm all for doing what we can, And I fully support improving the fairgrounds wherever that may be. And so that's my opinion at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's in need of some tender loving care. I understand that.
Mhm. We do have a presentation that kind of condenses our research from 2018 leading up to this year, everything that we've compiled. We do have a very nice presentation available, and I'd be very happy to give that to Carrie to give to all of you.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's time, and I think I know the ICAP has been talking almost every month about the need for a more appropriate venue with more space for more activities, and I'm certainly supportive of that. If the rodeo grounds turns out to be the best
option. Obviously, there'll be some workarounds to do with the current users of the land, but there is additional land there as well. So I'm glad that you're really moving toward a resolution. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments? All right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it and appreciate all the work that group has done. All right, so Drew, I think you're next on the agenda with the second reading of the revised zoning ordinance for Clay County. Specific,
Gotta wait till 9:20 though.
oh, we have to wait till 9:20. We've got 8 minutes. Okay, well, let's see. What-
Start with the plat first,
Yeah.
get that done.
Sure. So this would be a plat of tracks 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Skogsburg edition. Seems pretty straightforward. This would be resolution 2024-14.
Yeah, Adam here is the owner and I think they're dividing this up for two brothers owning land.
Yep. Hi there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is just a tract of land we bought as tenants in common. And we're just splitting it in half, right down the middle between myself and my cousin.
All right.
And then the other two is, would it be like a buildable lot kind of adjacent to those the other houses down there? And then there's like a funny, really narrow
Mhm.
fourth one that is
Yep.
that like basically an egress for a drain tile that's running through there? So
Yep,
it's
that
draining all
tract
the other
4 was
fields?
actually found when McLaury's did the survey.
Okay,
It looks like Stallheim's, the neighbor to the west, they had their fence replaced and the fencing contractor didn't put the fence back where it was originally. So now there's like a 7-foot gap there,
Hmm.
which works out fine for us because we're gonna tile track 1, 2, and 3, and our outlet will go right through track 4.
okay.
If Stallheims don't allow us to go through their property, which there's already existing tile, I'm told.
Okay.
But I have to have that discussion with, I believe it was Dave Stallheim I talked to.
All right.
All right. Any?
Since-
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say, it seems like it comports with the neighboring properties and, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you don't have an easement, a drainage easement with them yet.
There is that.
I thought the track had to be at least 2 acres.
We do allow exemptions for practical reasons like that. As long as they're not buildable lots smaller than 2 acres, then we're good to go.
Okay.
Any other comments, Drew? Yep.
You know, I always end up going to the subdivision ordinance and going through there, so you guys have seen all the terrain drawings and all those things and the mile and all the directions and all that, right?
No, there's no terrain, there's no,
There isn't any of that.
No.
I guess I apologize. I'm not an issue with this one at all, but I still am just a little bit confused about the checklist that I should be going off of, because I always feel that, you know, part of my responsibility before these come through is to just go to the subdivision ordinance. That's the document that guides these, right?
Yep.
And so then there's minor plats. Those are exempt from a lot of things, but this isn't technically that because it has 4.
Yep.
And a couple other reasons
Yep.
maybe. And so then don't we follow the steps in you
for
have
a
a
housing development, yes, but not for every plat that's more than 3 lots. That just isn't.
I wonder if is that something that's clear in that ordinance, Dick? Cause I feel like as I read it, it seems like this whole process seems to be governed primarily by the subdivision ordinance. Like those are the steps that we're following. Is that right? Or is there a different part of the zoning ordinance that I should be looking at?
No, that's the place you'll be right at, but like when we have the checklist, there's for each item, really, there's does not apply. You know, essentially, when we do make a checklist for those, and
And I see those on the
this would be a
application,
place,
so,
this would be a
okay.
place where that particular thing would not apply. Utility easements and access easements for roads and those sorts of things. They definitely wouldn't, most of that ordinance would not be logical to apply to those sorts of things like track number 4.
Sure.
And each of the others too, for a place like this, that's more prospective and I don't think that it's necessary to go through each of those when there's several lots involved.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that, Travis?
Know exactly what you just said.
Okay.
All right.
Cause I always think I need to go to this section 401 to look at the preliminary plan things and a lot of these are all just shalls. They're not listed. So some are listed as if they apply, but some are listed as it shall include this, shall include that. That's why I'm always asking about those is because it
Yeah.
appears that they're supposed to be a part of that
Yeah.
when it comes to us, but.
You know, for our part, Drew's our expert and
Yeah.
he understands when and when those should or shouldn't apply. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't challenge him from time to time. Like we do each of our employees.
It's
From
good
time
for
to time.
everybody.
It's
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
it's good for them and good for us to do a challenge where it's appropriate.
Yeah.
But I think here that we're
Okay.
going down the right path.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, I'm always just seeking consistency. So
Sure.
checklists help me make sure that I'm treating everybody the same. So thank you.
Move to approve the plots?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Excellent. And got another couple of minutes,
I was
so,
trying to burn minutes, sorry. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's good.
Yep.
That's good, that's good. All right. Maybe we've got 2.5 minutes. We could just do vouchers.
I'll move to approve the vouchers. Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the vouchers. Any discussion? I was just curious what Brock White Cap LP is.
That is one of our awarded bidders for, I believe, asphalt or concrete. Brad would know.
Oh, yeah.
Not Brock.
Yeah, that's it's a
Brock
highway
White?
thing.
Brock White, used to be Brock White, we did our road saver, crack sealing, nasty.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, I just hadn't seen it before and was
Yeah, we
curious.
used to be Brock White, they changed it, named the White Cap now.
All right,
And I missed who seconded that motion.
who seconded it?
I think
Great.
Dave did.
Dave? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the vouchers. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And let's see. I think we're just about there.
I think by the time Drew gets done explaining it, we'll be afterward.
All right. So the second reading of the utility scale solar energy conversion systems ordinance.
Yeah, our second reading here. I made two small clarification grammar changes to the proposed ordinance. Those are highlighted in red. And that's about it. No more comments or anything else yet I have received.
All right.
Okay.
Discussion?
So that actually, that clarification, the one under E2 was not how I think that I would have interpreted it previously. I think
For
so.
the property line
Yep,
setback.
so that one specifically, I'll read it for folks. Setbacks, the following table lists all applicable setbacks for utility scale energy systems. And then there's the addition of the required minimum distance from any structure use to the utility scale energy system lot line. Setbacks shall be measured from the utility system energy system lot line to the structure use as identified in the following setback chart. So I think I would have expected that, because if they lease an entire parcel and then only half of it, and that half is, a half mile away from a house or something like that, but maybe the lot line is within 300 feet of that house, this would prevent them from building that. I would think it would be from the edge of any structure or fence surrounding it or something like that. It seems,
From the uses lot line, where the. Not the property lot line, but the uses lot line, where the lot is set for that. That's what I had in mind with that.
okay,
Cause that's kind of how I have it with CAFOs and campgrounds and
Okay.
things like that. So they might have to. Plat that off. If they're doing a 40, they might have to just plat off.
flat off the area exactly where it's
Yeah,
gonna land.
yeah.
Okay,
And,
But that's how we have it with CAFOs and that's. kind of what that
consistency is
might-
good, yeah.
Yeah.
and that's what it says in the changes you have up in the top, and then for on the property, the uses, that's what the measured from property line, the addition down at the bottom. At the notes,
Okay,
measured from the property line to the use of structure. In other words, that that asterisk goes to the property lines. And that, to my, I'm interpreting it, that means that any of the structures and the uses have to be 50 feet inside of their property.
yes. Yep, I think that's right, because otherwise you'd have a kind of a circular logic with the language above,
Yeah,
right, without that asterisk.
Yeah, I brought that up last time and he came up with a lot better solution than I would have, I think, so.
But this isn't how we look at CAFOs though. This is different. Cause we
The
go,
setback chart is different.
cause we go from the corner of the facility to the closest corner of the house.
Right.
That's kind of what I was expecting this was.
But this is different.
That's how I have intended it to be written. If that's not what you guys read it as.
That, yeah, that's not what I read. I think a corner of the facility or something. I think that language,
It's uses lot line.
Cause this says property line.
It says measured from the uses lot line to the structured use. So the use, the solar facility. The footprint of the solar
you know,
and then somebody's house.
well, but this is
Which
saying,
is-
so from somebody's house to the, to
Yeah,
the
or
lot
that
line.
way, yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, that's kind of how we have it with CAFOs, where here's your production area. And then measured from there to the house, near set to the house. Right?
Yeah.
And that's
Closest
kind
point
of
of-
how I have it intended here.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that, it's not clear, or we should.
I mean,
clarify that?
if we're saying that the fence, cause this is gonna have to be fenced in. If we're considering that part of the facility.
Yep.
Then you measure from that point, closest point of that fence to the closest point of the house.
Well, the fence may be in the property that's leased or owned by the solar facility.
Right, it might not be the property
Inside
line
of the
fence.
lease. So the property line itself is where he'd measured from, is what my interpretation is.
That's how I'm reading this
In
as
other
well.
words, that would be, say if it's on 160 acres, that the edge of that property. There'd be 33 foot discrepancy between whether they own it to the middle of the road. Or to the edge of the ditch, the usable property of that particular facility. That's the only gray area that I see. I would think that it would be from the edge of the usable area. In other words, where the fence would be, if it were directly on their property line, on their usable area.
But that's not the property line. The fence isn't the property line.
No,
When it comes to the road,
yeah,
the middle of the road is the
middle of the
property.
road's the property line. So that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm living with that.
it just depends on how you want to interpret it.
Yeah, because if it's 50 feet. If you're interpreting to the middle of the road, then 33 feet of that, 50 feet, you could put some of the material, some structures within, you know, roughly 20 feet of the road, the property line itself, or the usable area.
Right, but I think with the 50 feet that you're referencing,
Yeah,
everything has to be 50 feet off
Yeah.
of property line,
Mhm.
yes.
no matter what.
Right,
So that covers everything,
yeah,
roads and nothing can be built outside of that.
right,
So I think that's all, I think that's singular.
right.
And then setbacks from dwellings are from the facility.
Yeah, 300 feet from the edge of the solar property to the whatever structure it would be.
Because even if the house sits 400 feet
Yeah,
inside a property line, they're still gonna have to be 50 feet off their own property line,
Yes, yeah,
so.
I'm less confused than I thought I was.
Right, other discussion.
I just got a question. So this 300 feet, it's from the house, not any other structures on the.
No, just the principal use.
The
structure.
dwelling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or businesses as well, I suppose. So if you have like a shop or something, maybe.
Hmm.
How do you read that change in language there?
I think it can be argued both ways, which does seem so concerning from my perspective, although I think it's. When talking about in relationship to the CAPO, the ordinance, I mean, that seems to be kind of the standard that we've always utilized. So I think that gives me a little more. I feel a little better about that since we already use a system for CAPOs, that this is the intention is to follow. But there's ambiguity for sure, and obviously, Dick just said I'm less confused than I thought I was, but I think everybody reading this is gonna bring up some amount of confusion. I mean, they can read it how they want to.
Great.
In the CAFE ordinance, did we say corner or edge?
Closest corner of each
Of the facility?
of the facility and the dwelling or business. That's how we measure from closest points.
Yeah,
And that language is in the CAFO ordinance?
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of would prefer that language here. I think that.
Well,
that-
that's what this is saying.
Oh, that is, this is the same language.
Yeah,
that's in the
it
CAFO
is saying
ordinance.
that when
Okay,
you, when
all
it's the required minimum distance from any structure or
Oh.
use.
I wonder, or
To the-
well, I guess lot line.
to
I was
the
gonna
lot
say, I wonder if it's like lot and like feed lot or if it's a kind of a
Well, when you, cause then it
Word.
says that, the
choice. But this says
the lot line
line.
to a structure use identified in the following setback. So if it's from whatever that lot line of that facility is. I suppose here, I mean, lot line is saying edge,
Yeah,
edge of facility to closest business, closest dwelling.
Yeah.
now, when it says any structure or use, like say if it were an acreage and a person had an outbuilding that was closer to the uses lot line than the house,
Well, it's gotta be defined though,
we say structure here.
well,
as defined though, as defined in the table.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's,
Well,
dwelling
I mean, there's
structures,
no additional buildings.
not
I see,
accessory
okay.
structures, yeah.
It's just dwellings, businesses, church and schools.
Other discussion. I'm concerned about the 1/4 mile setback, and I know back when we first discussed this, I think we had all talked about a mile from Spirit Mound setback. I would still like to see that setback extended from 1/4 mile, largely because of the significance of Spirit Mound. It's a national historic site. It's a state park. It's a Native American spiritual space. I would like to see that extended.
I've done my, I've done a little traveling, looking at solar farms and it's unmistakable that they are a little different than having another grain bin or a farmstead or even a feedlot. They're stark black and it really does, it is really a more really more visible. If you have one, like the one I went by and I was drove over to within a mile of the one out at New Underwood. And yeah, your eye just goes right to it. That's the part that bothers me a little bit about protecting the viewscape of Spirit Mound. The other part is that really Spirit Mound represents the trip of Lewis and Clark, who was commissioned by Thomas Jefferson, who invented the mile grids that we have today, we would probably be speaking French or Russian here if it weren't for Thomas Jefferson. And the purpose of that trip was to what the heck did I just buy? And that was important to Jefferson himself because he was kind of a small government sort of guy. He was a scientist. He was somebody that was very forward thinking, but it really went against his grain to buy all this land. It came up for sale. It was kind of a garage sale sort of thing because France was broke. They needed money bad to finance the war they were in the middle of and no end in sight. And so that's how we ended up with this place. And that was the place, that particular expedition was how Jefferson decided to go ahead with it and have Congress authorize the purchase is what the devil did we buy? I'm glad they did. And this Spirit Mound is one spot where we know that group of, it's an Army expedition. They were, it wasn't just a ragtag group going out that he sent out to, it was sponsored by the US Army and incredibly well planned and incredibly successful. This is one spot where we can see that. And those that live close to Spirit Mound would probably not own 160 acres or 40 acres or 500 acres if it weren't for that expedition. We wouldn't have the system that we have of laying out land and making it easy for Lincoln some 60 years later to give this land away in the Homestead Act. So everything builds on it. On the next piece, that Lewis and Clark expedition was the first step in us being here and being the United States of America rather than 15 or so crowded on the East Coast. So that's the significance of that to me. I've been out and looked at solar farms elsewhere. I went on the Basin trip when we had the first reading here, and I apologize for being gone for that reading. I tried to be zoomed in, but the trip was just such that I couldn't finish the job in this. I had a nice talk with PUC Commissioner Nelson and his lawyer about the future of solar within the grid for in South Dakota and for East River and our co-op system. And there's a place for it, an important place. So yeah, I'm troubled myself about having just a quarter-mile setback. And I understand the idea of land ownership and the resistance we have, especially right now, to the taking of some of the uses of property. It's not necessarily that a person would be taking away the present use or any future use except leasing it to a solar farm. That so there's a lot of gray area here, and I'm sitting in that gray area. If I had my druthers, I'd make it so it's sort of limit. Probably go to like a half mile would be my sweet spot. Separation all the way around. We're disturbing relatively little land, the stuff that's right in your face if you were to have solar panels up there. Most likely they would be to the north. So that's my soliloquy. That's where I'm coming from. I kind of hate to do the Travis especially, what I've done in the past. Roll things back for another dang meeting.
Another two.
He'll be glad, yeah, he'd be glad to have me off the board, I think, with this. But yeah, for the accident of I was out really thinking about this particular project when I was gone during the first reading. Other thoughts?
My thought is, your Lewis and Clark analogy, which I totally respect. My analogy on the Lewis and Clark expedition is those gentlemen and their party risked their lives to progress and make the nation a better place. And I'm sure they didn't stand there thinking, let's be a stalemate. So I got a dog in this race because I'm gonna look at these solar panels from my recliner. So a mile would put that out of my view, but I'm for property owners' rights. Some of these people have owned their land for generations. And it's their land. It's no different than any other location in the county that we would discuss. I believe Lewis and Clark would promote progression. To see, because that's what we're doing, we're moving forward with this, solar energy, with good or bad, it's not my place to determine. My concern is this gentleman, family, whoever owns this property, and he can do with it as he seems fit within our guidelines. And that's my belief on it. So I'm okay with the quarter-mile setback. But personally, yeah, I prefer not to, but I can't bring that into this discussion, so.
Travis?
I'm okay with the 1,300 feet or the quarter mile, 1,320. I'd rather see it 250. I mean, because of the property. Along with the lawsuit that we were just involved in, where that judge says that the public doesn't get to control the landscape and the view, over other people's private property. And I think we're talking about that here. And then the other question I have is, who owns Spirit Mount?
State of South Dakota.
Then how come their website says it's controlled by the Board of Trustees of the Spirit Mount Trust?
There's a public-private partnership. There's a private nonprofit group, the Spirit Mountain Trust, and they share management duties with the state of South Dakota because this would be like a satellite park that would be very difficult. It's actually managed out of Newton Hills. So the superintendent for the park is almost
But managed, yes, managed, but who, their website says that so there's 7, I think, on the Board of Trustees.
Yeah.
The board of members. And they make the decisions on what happens at the.
in concert with the state. The state has final say so because they own the ground.
It's exactly like Clay County Park.
Yeah.
The
There you go.
state owns our campground there and everything down to the river. Our Parks Board manages it.
Okay, because the
And
website
Exactly the
was,
same way.
the website was confusing. They don't mention the state at all.
State owns it.
Okay. And see,
It
doesn't say that on their website. That's what I was
It's,
confused by.
On the plot maps, it's listed as ownership of South Dakota Game Fish and Parks.
And I will say in conversations I've had with superintendents from both districts, they really appreciate what we do in Clay County. It is somewhat unique that we have such a strong private interest that steps up, brings money into the process and ends up with two properties that are managed much better than they would have. This is from the state. They say that if then they would be able to.
They
if
don't
it's
want
just
the
on
load.
them, so.
They don't
So does the
have-
state kick
right.
money in then?
Pardon me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, well, they really need to change their website then. Because it says that they're totally funded by memberships and.
and it may be that maybe you're on the Spirit Mountain Trust's website. So maybe that's just the one that's managed by the Spirit Mountain Trust. So maybe they're saying, this
Well,
is the way we
how
as an
many-
entity exist,
How many Spirit Mountains are there though? I mean, if you're the Spirit Mountain Trust.
But
isn't that Spirit
if you
Mountain?
go through Game Fish and Parks, is that where it directs? you?
No, I went to the Spirit Mountain Trust.
So,
because
so,
it's
so
their-
go through Game Fish and Parks. I think they've got a page for Spirit Mountain. It's probably clear that. they
Because when
want it
Mark
there.
Wetmore spoke, he talked about Spirit Mountain Trust
Yeah. And you-
managing it, and they get nothing from the state.
And you do bring up a good point, is that there's only one Spirit Mound. There's about 4 places where we could stand and go, those guys stood exactly here. One of the 3 forks.
That's generous. I've heard as few as one and
Yeah.
maybe two. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple
Yeah.
others. Blackbird Brand is one spot where.
There's
where
there's a
you can
campsite
go.
where they found a.
Those
latrine.
guys were right here. Yeah.
You know, when you brought up that when you go to the plat maps or whatever, that says the state of South Dakota, well, you go on Beacon and
Sure.
Clay County Park where the rodeo grounds are
It's
at, it's
owned
in
by
care of
Bill
Bill Kenny, which
Yeah.
Bill
No,
Kenny
it's-
doesn't own it. That's
No,
why,
it's-
that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, the north part is owned by us, of course, but yes, you're right.
We own
South
the
part is
North-
game fish and
And-
parks,
yeah, Clay
and that's what's the analog to Spirit Mountain.
I think that one, I've had quite a few people give me calls about this ordinance, for and against, generally around the Spirit Mountain setback. At both for larger or smaller, and part of the discussion when I'm talking to people is to clarify for people that this is not a permitted use that we're considering. So the ordinance is placing this under the conditional use. And if it was a permitted use, then somebody 1,320 feet away from Spirit Mound could put a facility in, as long as they check all the boxes, there it goes. There's no additional mitigation of any of these concerns that could occur at that stage. At this point, we're not considering any particular project. I have not spoken to any companies. I've not seen any maps ever about any of this. So so at this point, this is just, what are the rules for everybody? So I think that if a particular project wishes to site a half mile from Spirit Mound, my hope, I believe that when you have something listed as, if there's no reason to put any conditions on it, it should be a permitted use. So in that instance, I would expect that this would be the sort of site where you would strongly consider what the neighboring land use is. And if the neighboring land use is Spirit Mound, then we might ask for additional conditions that ensure that these values are respected. So perhaps they need to plant a grove of trees, so we can't see it, or maybe when they do their management of the land underneath the panels, they need to make sure it's a prairie. So you have like a grassland or at least grasses or something like that, so that there's continuity of grasses when you look out there. At this point, that would be more like what Lewis and Clark saw than a cornfield. It would have a different change. It would have big black rectangles in it, but the vegetation underneath it would look more like what was there when Lewis and Clark went through. So if I was sitting on the Planning and Zoning Commission and a conditional use permit request came up for this, those are the sorts of questions that I would think would be extremely important to ask the developer. And with that in mind, were we considering a permitted use right now? I might feel that it was more important to argue this particular location needed to be somewhat larger, if that's the only tool that we have to control this development at all in the future, we being the elected and appointed bodies of Clay County. But as it's written, I see a mechanism which I think that if we have a responsible planning and zoning commission, they would utilize in this instance. And likewise, if someone comes up and they have a dwelling that's 400 feet away from a facility, but they really hate them, I think that I would hope that they would come to a meeting if they're gonna cite something 400 feet from their house and perhaps ask the commission to consider additional mitigation there. So I think that that's why we have conditional uses and permitted uses as separate entities, is because conditional uses require conditions to ensure that they work with zoning, neighboring land uses, and comprehensive plan. So that's my current take on it. So.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That was what the last several days I've been thinking, well, if we leave it alone, conditional use permitting will give us a chance to have a second shot of something as it would be prospective on the land. But also being a surveyor, I know that would have to be a pretty tall set of trees if the edge of the solar panels were a quarter mile away. You cut that height of the trees down by a whole lot by going up to a half mile, for instance. So that's why I was kind of thinking in terms, if we changed it, half would be enough. We'd impact a lot fewer landowners.
And I think that is something that we can think about in this meeting, is that what I was saying right there
Yeah.
is inviting 50 people to come to a conditional use permit.
Yes.
On one of these. And I think if the setback is a half mile,
then, you know, I mean, I think that it being a quarter mile versus 125 feet allays some of those concerns. It is something that one can point at, saying, well, this is more than 10 times what the initial draft of this had for a setback from Spirit Mountain. But I think that if you move it out to a half mile, it becomes easier to say, we handled this at the when we were writing the ordinance, and we, not being myself, I'm not on planning and zoning commission, but if I was an imagined planning and zoning commission member, I might say, this half mile is much larger than any other setback. At that distance, like your concerns about the view shed are addressed by the ordinance. So, relax, but I don't know. That's hypotheticals. So I don't know. No.
Well, I'll make-
Yeah, go on.
I'll make the motion to approve the ordinance, the amendment the way it is.
I'll second.
Is there further discussion? I'd like to bring up one other thing, which is the section on applications and what they have to include. There is in the decommissioning section, a requirement that they bring soils up to their previous levels. And in talking to the American Farmland Trust, which is a nonprofit that is for preserving farmland for the future, their suggestion was, that's problematic. And so I was going to suggest that the application should include some kind of study of soil quality that would guide later restoration.
Well, that's exactly what we're saying now. We say, to the extent possible, the site must be restored and reclaimed to the topography and topsoil quality that existed just prior to the beginning of the construction of the project.
Yeah,
Now,
so we
in
need
my
to
opinion-
document that.
in my opinion, well, that's part of the conditional use by the time we get to these sorts of things. But in my opinion, that if they are good stewards and plant the right types of vegetation underneath the panels, that soil could very well be better than it was before the solar panels went in. In fact, I would expect it to be if it was properly done. Now, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was doing more solar reading. There's a place there's a solar farm in Indiana where, let's be polite. I don't want to be too pejorative here, but the operators, the builders of the solar farm, they spread sand over to control any vegetation. So it would be barren soil underneath all of the panels. And the ensuing this has only been in operation a couple of years. And in the ensuing couple of years, that sand has been blown all over the neighbors' properties. So they have sandstorms during high wind.
It'll be really good for their
deals.
panels too. Yeah.
And it's gotta be hard on their panels, and I wouldn't call them, I'd use some names for these guys that designed this. But that's one of the reasons that we need to have during the other part, during construction, that we want to, we mentioned vegetation and have an approved vegetation scheme when something is put together here. We're also in kind of a precarious spot here. We're right at the boundary between tall grass prairie and short grass prairie. So it both gives us choices on the types of vegetation that would be appropriate, but it also restricts us a little bit on what's going to thrive, since we're kind of on the edge of both regimes of natural prairie. So yes, I understand what you're saying, but I think that we've got it pretty well covered here.
Another point of discussion that was just coming back to my mind, I recall, so we had a long, very well-attended meeting where we were considering an earlier draft of this, and we settled on a mile setback as our recommendation for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And part of that was that would align with a existing a mile boundary within which someone would have to do some sort of because it's a National Historic Site, some sort of a view shed study or something like that. Can anyone remind me, did you recall the details of what that is? Is that an additional protection that
that folks that are interested in Spirit Mound could rely upon, or is that just a recommendation? Is that something that's a permit that would need to be approved? Does anyone recall exactly? I thought that one of the things that this would do would just simplify and align those boundaries with each other and just say, well, you're not gonna need to worry, nobody's gonna need to worry about getting one of those studies because you won't be placing it within a mile. Is that?
Rings a bell.
I do remember that. I don't remember,
We don't have Kurt
I don't
Demick here
remember
with
the
us today,
verbiage
so.
that, in it, I guess it would not be fair to spring that on, a solar company or the landowners at the last minute after they were in the conditional use permit, because I know that would come up at that time, but I think they would have to deal with the national authorities at that point, so. That would argue more for leaving it as it is.
I think so. Yeah, I was just curious about that, trying to weigh, you know. Yeah, just trying to weigh factors. So
I don't remember whether it was, they shall do a viewscape or may do a viewscape or is required to, you know, what that action word would be.
do you recall, Carrie?
I don't.
Yep.
Sure. Come on up.
Is that on?
They're always on.
Yeah.
I'm Suzanne Skirm. I'm a resident here in Vermillion. I just wanted to say, I agree with Chairman Smith about having at least 3/4 of a mile setback because of all the reasons. It's a spiritual place for the natives. It's a it's a beautiful landscape, but it's also one of the few tourist attractions we have here in Vermillion. And not that many tourists come through here. They come through here to see the National Music Museum. They come through to see the river, and they come through to see Spirit Mountain. And if they come and go up the mound and see solar panels within a 1/4 mile, I can just imagine them saying, what were they thinking? You know, I think we should leave that view unobstructed for many reasons, that being one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
My name is Patricia Demond and I live out by the S turn. And I have some concerns about the climate, the altering of the climate that this is going to cause. My cousin is a huge farmer in Ohio and his neighbor had one of these put in. He said it generates a lot of heat. The panels are black, the sand is reflective. It's going to absorb the heat, but it's also going to put the heat back into the atmosphere. We get a lot of bad storms here. The land through the Pleasant Valley is relatively flat, and when it comes off that bluff, I mean, we had the derecho here 3 years ago. What happens when it runs through the solar panels? Who cleans up the glass shards? Who, you know, who's responsible for what's going to happen to all these pieces if a tornado or a derecho happens to run through this solar farm? I have livestock. I don't want them to be shredded. I also am concerned about just the panels themselves, the black panels. We had a Ford van that had black tinted windows. And one summer when it was so hot, the sun on the black window actually burst the black window out. So I'm very concerned about what this is going to do to the atmosphere, the heat, and the change in an already somewhat unstable landscape.
Thank you. And Dick, I know you had done some research early on the climate impact, so maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, I had some early concerns, you know, back when, there was even a solar developer that was here and talked to us a little bit. And I asked them, and then I did some other research afterwards. And where they cover huge amounts of land, you can end up with some small scale heating over the farm itself, and that'll cause circulation gyres. And but for the most part, as I checked into existing farms, there really weren't any where that was a big issue, other than certain spots in the desert southwest where there was cropland near it, and extreme heating, of course, really high sun angles that in our climate, it probably wouldn't be much of an issue. I think we'd be in pretty good shape here. As far as shattering, I'm the same. I currently own a black pickup. It's the first black vehicle I've ever owned because I hate the dumb things. They do heat gain on that small scale even. But I've never had a window pop, but I've seen it. And so, you know, I've thought through the physics of this on the scale we're talking about, and that part isn't as troubling to me. As far as the glass shattering during, say, hailstorms, that sort of stuff, that's one of the reasons that we have got going to require them during the conditional use permit process to have a relatively large bonding to cover any decommissioning or repair that's required during after some sort of an event like that, or when they're getting rid of, or they're decommissioning the site itself. So that's something I've thought about and thought through a little bit, and I think that I think the benefits of having a solar farm here would outweigh both on all scales, on the local scale, on the state scale, and on the national scale. I think there's benefits that would be derived from a solar farm that outweigh some of those risks. I'm a risk management sort of guy, not quite like Lane, but it's his whole life, but I really consider it carefully.
Are they gonna require them to do a barrier around the panels?
There's a requirement of fencing in here, I believe.
Not
Yes.
fencing,
Oh.
trees, shrubbery, bushes, something so that we who live out there don't have to look at solar panels.
Yeah, that's precisely the sort of thing that one would bring up in a conditional use permit hearing. So, yep.
I mean, if everybody's so for it, put it in your backyard. You think about living there and having it in your front yard, looking out your window, going out down the country road where you live, walk, ride your horses, have your cattle, your tractors, and you've lived there, and family has lived there for years and years and years, and then you put that crap up there?
Yeah,
Sorry.
we should have had her go to the podium, I guess. What's your name? And
Yeah.
Michelle Johnson.
okay, yeah,
My husband's Dwayne. My mother and father-in-law have lived out 60+ years.
Yes.
Off the S curve.
yes,
And you know what? We have a son that wants to farm and his family live out there, a generation farm. Does he want to look out at solar panels on his front window? Does he want his kids to run around with solar panels? A storm comes up, they get cut up by glass? Well, that's a little bit too late to fix anything afterwards. And who's going to clean up the glass? I mean, it could be for miles because that derecho would really get a number on my outbuilding. I mean, lots and lots of things. I mean, if it's so great, and then I've seen them before too. I've seen solar panels around out west and stuff. They're on barren land out there. There aren't that many farms around or ranches that close to it. Find another place for it. This is where family farms are. And we'd like to keep our family farms.
Well, there's a lot of,
Our generations want to live there and keep living there. I hope my son's son lives there and farms. This whole thing is really causing a lot of rethinking.
well, the lease prices are quite high for these. So I think that there's certain,
What's money
so
in your pocket?
what I'm. So what I wanted, my
Please let him
my
speak.
point being just that for some landowners, this may be the economic model that makes it easier for them to keep their land. And so I mean, the lease prices that I hear discussed around these are much higher than the lease prices for good irrigated farm ground. So there's ways that this could be an income stream for a family farm that's struggling on a tight margin. And if they get an offer like this, it might be the difference between them keeping their farm or not. So there's it cuts both ways. It's not a simple question of that this is going to make it less likely for people to retain a family farm, retain land in the family. So it's.
So they retain it, but they're not farming.
So I just want to say that this is not an argument, but
Right.
you are welcome to come up to the podium
Not great.
and, yeah, and state your opinion, but, yeah, we can't really have cross argument here.
It gets emotional.
Yeah,
I understand.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
understand.
What we're doing right now is trying to balance various needs and various interests of various people in the county, and it is definitely not simple, and that we don't want to take anybody's property rights away. We don't want to make the county and the lifestyle that people have here unfit for them and their children and future generations. I mean, this is exactly what we're trying to weigh. So you're bringing your concerns here is exactly why
Yeah.
we want you to be
Yeah.
here. So thank you.
And it's important to understand that we're at the point right now of creating the rules that any solar company that would come into the county has to live with. Right now, we have no rules. So they'd come in without any constraints at all. On how they would build their system. So
No, they can't.
pardon me?
If we don't have it, they can't come in. They couldn't build if they wanted to right now.
Right. Let's make it that way.
I wonder about that part.
No, that was what the campground was over too, because we didn't have it in there, so they couldn't build.
Yeah,
So this would be the same thing. If we don't have it, you can't do it.
well, it gives us, this at least gives us a framework of rules.
Yes.
And minimal standards. These are minimum standards, and it's also within the conditional use section of the ordinance as well. So it is not a permitted use. Someone cannot just come in and put one of these in by meeting all these criteria. They need to also go and convince the Planning and Zoning Commission that this comports with the neighboring land uses, that it's not going to that it's going to comport with the comprehensive plan, that it's going to comport with the zoning district it's in. So there are additional steps before something gets permitted. If it was a permitted use, then these would just be the boxes you need to check, then you're a go. But this is a conditional use, which would give, if someone tries to cite something near your home, then I think every time I've heard the Planning and Zoning Commission consider anything, they put a lot of weight on neighboring landowners. If you own property next door, they care a lot what you think, so.
Definitely.
Yeah, and the other piece of it that makes me comfortable is the bond requirement. So before they can build anything, they have to acquire a conditional use permit and deal with the concerns of surrounding neighbors. But in addition, they have to pay and post a bond, and that bond insurance will pay for any reconstruction of and bringing the land back to its previous state. I guess I would still like to see something in there that out front required the company to do testing of soil so that we had a standard in place. But I think that bond is really critical. Yes.
Files bankruptcy and another company takes it over.
Yeah, and that's where the bond kicks in. So that's what the bond is for.
The conditional use permit goes with the land, not with the owner.
Okay.
So whatever conditions are on there, the following owner would have to follow. Yes.
Yep. And that new owner would have to also post a bond before they could use the property.
And as far as your soil testing, most farmers do have.
Yeah, they'll have
soil testing. done.
Yeah,
So they're
the
working
question is a
records of that.
record.
Yeah, they have a record. Their own soil testing.
I think NRCS has a lot of those records too.
Yeah.
But even that's between the company and the landowner.
Yeah.
I mean, that's we don't need to get into those weeds, cause that's up to the landowner. I mean, and like Dick said, it should be in better shape.
Mhm.
If they ever did clean it up, or
And we
pull
can-
out of there.
And we can have some, you know, we can help protect that part of our county from abuse, essentially.
Well, and we require vegetation and not
Correct.
sand.
Correct. That's exactly
So-
right.
Mhm.
That's, the sand was the worst case scenario
Yeah.
I've seen so far.
That's some pretty poor engineering.
You know,
yeah.
I understand the concerns because Michelle, I live out there too. I do not want to look at them, but I'm not gonna take your property rights away from you either. And you talk about debris and stuff. I mean, where does that stop? Do you need to tear down your machine sheds because the metal might fly in a derecho and hurt someone? I mean, that's, you know, we're let's say, you know, we're exaggerating, you know, some things for an end that I would prefer to see, but that's not my option. Because I don't own all the property around me, so I have to respect my neighbors and their property rights. I mean, this has divided our neighborhood, that there's no doubt about that. And that's sad to see. But in my position here, what's that?
Kind of like Hyperion,
Yep,
when they were trying to come in, stuff, it's divided families, church and everything.
yep, and that's sad to see, you know, in our neighborhood. But you know, in my position here, I can't allow my personal feelings, you know, I fully respect people's property rights, you know. I mean, this would be different for you and me and everybody else if it was 10 miles to the west, you know, so we're personally involved in it. And I have to respect the people that own the land.
Would you be able to request, a climatologist to, assess the vast amount of heat and, from those solar panels and how it would change the atmospheric conditions in Pleasant Valley?
I don't think that we have that opportunity.
No.
Well,
But there are studies,
Yeah,
and I
that's-
remember Dick citing studies
Yeah.
that and you correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, what you talked about was that the studies show that, yes, there is some heat impact, but with the new systems, it's not nearly what it used to be. And it's, you know, it's acceptable to neighbors with normal setbacks. It's not going to create its own climate energy, which I think is the biggest concern. And that was something we thought about very early on.
Yeah, that was research that was done east of here, but yeah, that's what
Was the
quieted some of my concerns about having creating microclimates and you know, I know they exist, you know, I know that I've studied spots where little microclimates have been created. But not necessarily by solar panels. We're not talking about the same sort of things. So like I say, my concerns have mainly been quieted about that by looking into that issue very early on, because it was one of the very first issues that I brought up.
Well, I'm just concerned about the topography of the other studies versus the river and valley. Have the river and the valley situation that this particular company wants to put these things in. I
Well, we
mean, you
don't-
said they didn't even have very little impact in the southwest, but we have the river, we have the bluffs, the valley, the winds come down through that valley.
We don't have any particular company at this point.
No.
There was rumor of one, but that has not come to attrition. So what we're dealing here right now is what ifs, and we're trying to set a basis rules for those what ifs. And if we get somebody to come in, that's where the CUP comes in, and we can ask for changes and challenge things and ask for certain items, you know. That's where we all need to show up to that planning and zoning when they're doing their cup and speak our concerns. we're, trying to set, just ground rules here, minimum ground rules that they have to follow, and the only when the setback we're talking about only comes into play if it's by Spirit Mountain, if it's 10 miles north, that doesn't even come into play. So we have these other guidelines for them to follow. So we truly, Drew will back this up. We have nobody that has an application in for a solar farm or even speaking to us about one at this point any longer.
When you say that, any longer was there?
No, there never was.
There was rumors.
Somebody in the back had their hand up. Yeah, please.
I do respect the board. This is a major problem, and we need to figure out the solution to it. My name is Daryl Hendrickson, and I am a landowner, probably right across the road from one of these farms. I respect the rights of the people that want to put these in, but also as landowners across from, we have rights too. And seems to me that you are trying to address this. And one of the suggestions called all you guys up and I talked to you. One of the suggestions I would like to see in this is a windbreak around the whole thing so we don't have to look at it. That is one of the things, and I don't think that's too much of a thing to ask.
That needs to be in the CUP.
That'd be addressed in the CUP.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Because
this is just the first part of it. If it comes to an application, then it goes on to the zoning committee, correct?
Planning and zoning commission would hear the first reading, the conditional use permit. And then if it's issued and it's not contested, then that's the only body that hears it. If someone appeals it, then it comes up to us. So.
One other question I do have to ask. The taxation of these. Does that stay as ag use? Or
Yeah.
does that go to commercial?
So the way it works is, the land, the ground underneath it remains taxed as ag use. And then there's a second and a third income stream that comes from the facility itself that's administered by the state. So there's a nameplate capacity and then there's a generation capacity. So those are two whole new income streams that come to the county.
Okay,
So-
that's one of the questions I was asking, because if it's just gonna be left at ag use and the county or the state isn't gonna get anything out of this.
No, we get quite a bit. I mean,
Okay.
it's one of the reasons why I think this deserves a lot of serious consideration is because it's so hard to find revenue. And the last thing we want to do is raise people's property taxes. And this
I
is the
know.
way that we can
And
find another stream. So,
money is an issue everywhere.
Yeah.
Just ask Rodney with the roads.
Yep.
But one of the things that do respect these people, if they want to put them in and they want to try it, that's fine. But I am across the fence and we have property rights too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Kathleen Kavanaugh. I'm resident of Vermillion. And my concern is the distance of the setback. And I was not at previous meetings because I was not aware of them. I wish I had been, because there's so much of this that I don't understand. But it seems like it's gone from I know it wasn't agreed on, but from a mile and a proposal to a quarter of a mile. And I'm totally for solar. I grew up here. I moved back 2 years ago from Denver. I had solar. I absolutely loved it. I looked into getting it here initially when I moved in, but I was told that South Dakota really didn't support it. I would like to see that change. I would love to see solar. But I don't understand why we need it within a quarter mile of Spirit Mound. I've had friends come from Denver just because of Lewis and Clark and Spirit Mound and to see it. Every reunion that I've been part of or in planning has talked about a walk to Spirit Mound. It's an important part of the tourism. And I think as such of the income, and I totally respect the property owner's rights. I owned a farm just across the county line in Union County. I was irritated when they put in Interstate 29, but I think it's beneficial to everyone. If we wouldn't have national parks, if we didn't say that at some point, the public interest, the national interest, may outweigh that property owner. We need to have those. And I think the property owners of these people who are looking at this is just as important as the property owner within a quarter mile. I would like to see at least a half mile setback. So if we're talking about a quarter mile of a property owners here versus what I think the other interests are of the public and the other adjacent landowners, I would just like to see a compromise here to say, let's at least set that minimum requirement of a half mile. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, CUP, it's a conditional use permit. And it's a process by which the company would get a permit to erect the structures. And so there's a first reading and then a second reading of the ordinance, and the public has an opportunity, 2 opportunities to come and speak. And abutting landowners are always given time.
Could we make this knowledge of these possible solar farms and the CUP meeting and so on and so forth a bit more?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely.
Because I wasn't informed about
Yeah.
this until.
We have some discussions about possibly updating our website at some point. At this point, it's not the clearest to navigate sometimes. The place to always look is the zoning, the county zoning tab. Is that right? Am I naming it right? I don't have it right in front of me. And once you go in there, you'll find a few things. You'll find our county zoning ordinance. That county zoning ordinance, it will really clarify for you what do we mean when we're talking about permitted uses, conditional uses. Each of the zoning districts have a list of permitted uses and a list of conditional uses. And those are the things you can do there. And the permitted uses, if you meet the requirements in the ordinance, you do them. If it's a conditional use, then it has this additional process. And you could read all about how that process works, how it's appealed, who hears what and everything. And that's all in there. And then also, anytime we're going to be considering a conditional use permit, a replat, a rezone, anything like that, you'll have notice on that page of that. So you might say, well, am I supposed to like check this thing all the time? That's one thing to do. We also publish them in the paper. Unfortunately, the expense of sending a weekly letter to everybody in the county saying what we're up to is too much, but spending time on that county website and familiarizing yourself with it makes it easy to see these things really quick. Like I could pull it up in just a second here, and we have a lot of strict requirements on the notice that we need to provide, how many days in advance things need to be posted. So you'll always see those on there for quite some time. If you hear any buzz around the county, you're definitely going to go see those documents on there. I'm not misspeaking about any of that, am I, Drew? Yeah. So I think that's the place to look at these, and then you can read through what that conditional use permit process is. You can watch next time a conditional use a CUP comes up, you can kind of watch what the process is for whatever it is. It might be, I don't know, someone might want to do a feeding operation or something. There's quite a few of them. So yep.
Yeah.
What's your normal meeting day?
The third Monday of the month, 5:15.
So yeah, if you set your reminder in a phone for the third Monday of every month, you can check Drew's
There you go.
agenda and see what's on the agenda for that evening.
And what's that at Oregon?
That's for the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's where all these things are going to start. That's where this started. And yeah. Yep.
That's where all of them would begin.
And if one was proposed to be going in next to your home or your property, as an adjoining property.
Yes.
Get notice.
That's right. If you're right next door, yep.
By mail.
Everybody
Yeah.
does that. Correct. Down here.
Right here.
Right here.
Yes.
Yeah, so the ordinance we're passing now is one that just frames what these companies have to produce in their application. So they can't do it without a bond. They have to produce a bond. They have to, produce all of this data. But then the conditional use permit is where the particular requirements for any given solar utility scale solar installation. Those are the conditional use permit sets out the conditions under which they can build. And that is the power of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And those conditions are all built at that time during planning and zoning. Those are all.
That's right.
Specified at that point. This particular, the planning and zoning board goes, well, this particular operation is going to make this effect. We got to do something about it. We need to make sure that they're within acceptable parameters.
Mhm.
And separately, I commend you for being here, you know,
Mhm.
I feel like our meetings and planning and zoning meetings are way too sparsely attended, and I don't know exactly how to fix that. I know that starting when I was probably 15 years old, my folks always subscribed to the newspaper, and one of the things that I always did was go to the fine print in the back where the minutes of the meeting are back. What did they do? And of course, it's too late by the time Dick is reading those that fine print in the back, that sort of stuff that's already done. But at least I knew what was done. And a lot of times I'd wonder, why the heck did this turn out like this? You being here, you can be part of the process, and that's a good thing, in my opinion. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad for the questions you have, and I guess you're kind of in a way like me from the time I was pretty young. When questions, I'll end up experiencing a question of some sort, or something that's going to happen, or something that has happened. I'm the kind with the real short attention span. I always say I've got the attention span of a 4-year-old, but when something new pops up, it's just in me that I have to take a look. I have to do some look into what the heck is going on with this particular subject. And I've been that way all my life. That's why I was a scientist. And so I'm happy to have been on this board. This has been a good thing. I'm not running for re-election, but I'm going to miss a lot of the questions that we have come up here. And that is the reason, that nature in me is why I looked into microclimates around solar farms and ran onto some of these other issues that really tickled my imagination that I needed to look into it. So I'm glad you're here, and I hope that you will, when I'm gone from here, I'd love to have someone like you take up space on this board sometime.
All right.
Is there, one last question from you? Is there a place that we could possibly get on an email list of something that would just say, hey, there's a meeting coming up at, 5:00 next Tuesday? I mean, email, you don't have to pay for that. Some kind of list where you could be more aggressive as far as public notification of these kinds of meetings.
Oh, that's interesting. That, we don't have anything like that. I know the city does. Because I'm on their list, and I regularly get an email. I think part of it is we don't have the staff that the city has, because we don't have the money that the city has. But that would be something for us to think about. Thank you.
That's just a mailing list that gives you the upcoming agenda, right? That's what I'm.
And minutes, yeah.
And minutes.
agenda
And then the minutes afterwards.
Yeah.
You'll stop getting those after the first of the year,
Oh, really?
once you get off the board.
Oh, okay.
That's why you're getting them.
Okay.
I
Okay.
get 2 because I've requested to be on one, so you can be on.
You
as
can
a
just
private
request
sen-
as a private
can
citizen.
be
Oh, you
on as a
can?
private
Okay.
senator.
I think that's right. Yep.
All right. Any other discussion?
No, I hope we can pass this. I think. I would hate to take more property rights away from somebody. Because if we change the setback, we're gonna go at least double of what we're taking away now.
Mhm.
All right, so we do have a motion, yeah?
We
And
do.
we have a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And we are on to the second reading of another amendment, and this is a request to rezone land at 30913 South Dakota Highway 19.
No comments or anything since the last reading.
Okay.
So I'll
Yeah.
move to approve the rezone.
I'll second.
There's a motion to approve the rezone in a second. Any further discussion? Seems pretty cut and dried.
Yep.
Um, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to page 2 of a long agenda. See, Rod.
Wait,
you're
we're already up to 9:45. Sweet.
Got a few right-of-way applications here, or no, it's a one right-of-way application.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
So this is for Vantage Point,
Yes,
South Dakota Alliance Communications.
and there's the ones coming in on the east side of the county. Down the Greenfield Road. And they have. Submitted their permits, we've looked at them all, they have checks with them, so I recommend you. Approve both of the projects.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You know,
And
I'll
then,
leave these and you can sign them when you get a chance, you're kind of busy.
Great.
today.
and then the cost of repair replacement of Norwegian Gulch culvert.
Yeah, we got. A contractor estimate to actually. Dig up the pipe at the Norwegian Gulch. On Frog Creek Road, which is about 40 feet. Under the road to the bottom of the pipe, it's a 12-foot pipe. We checked into also lining it. The liner come in, just the liner itself. For 200 feet. Is $358,696. Plus the cost to put it in. Plus they filled, it'll be smaller than the pipe. So there's a void all the way around it that needs to be filled with concrete. And unfortunately, I've been having trouble getting anybody to give me a price on the concrete. It's not normal concrete, it's flow, we call it flowable. And everybody's busy, of course. So there's, we're looking at close to 500,000 just to line it. From the quick figures we came up with, Holloway's Construction said, including the price of the pipe, which is 110,000 just for the culvert. He could keep it under 400,000. And I thought I printed that estimate off. I didn't, I printed off all the policies for True North. I didn't print off the estimate for that, so. But it's gonna be cheaper to dig it up. The only thing is. That's gonna be a substantial dig and a substantial road closure. On one of our main roads, north and south. Right now, it's the only one we got open. But, I don't know, we haven't. Done any traffic studies out there. We thought maybe LTAP would help us with that just to see. How much, of course, we gotta wait till the water goes down now before we get a true reading. Just kind of your thoughts. We don't have to disturb the road, but it's gonna cost us more money. I don't know if it outweighs. And then, we gotta find somebody to do that. That's beyond our capability. So there's gonna be labor involved in that, so. Holloway's figured a pumper truck for just to make head walls for the pipe to set in was like $4,000. And that, we'll have to have a pumper truck there to fill the whole pipe around it, you know, they slide this stuff in, it snaps together. And they set it on wood so it stays in the center as it goes through. Fill it with PVC pipe so they can pump the mud in there. It's kind of a unique way to do it. I can see good and bad, both directions. We got the money in the budget to do either one, but it's not gonna happen this year. I can't even get the pipe built till November, so. I did some food for thought, I guess, if you guys come up with a better idea. The pipe itself at the inlet is setting on concrete. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the other day it was just about running as hard as it could go. And at the inlet, the pipe is kind of shrunk up. The rest of it's pretty round. The company came down, looked at it before, and they said there'd be no problem getting a liner in, but all they do is supply the liner. They do not put it in. And of course, it's one of those things nobody's done around here, so I don't have a contractor that has any experience with doing it that I can ask for a better estimate. I know what it's gonna cost to dig it out, I guess is, that's the way I'm leaning, but just cause I know that part of it,
Do we know that flowable fill hold up to like conditions we have now?
yeah, because it'll be between the metal pipe and the liner. And it's capped off at both ends.
Oh, so it's capped, so
it's not,
Okay,
right, it's not running against it.
okay,
We have flowable fill, for instance, on the big culverts that we put in on the Ballin Road and 302, and we fill it halfway up the pipe. And of course, it takes longer for it to set.
Yep.
All that, but once it's set, it's pretty good, but there's a cap on it, so.
as long as the cap is good, we're
Yes,
good.
and the liner is about, I think it was about a ½ inch thick. And then, of course, we're downsizing the pipe, but a smooth liner, so it's still gonna take more water than what it is now due to the corrugations on the pipe. But right now, we have 17 inches of undermining in 3 different spots on the pipe. So I mean, this is something that needs to be done as soon as possible, but even if we dig it out, that can't happen till next spring.
So we got time.
Well,
Yeah.
kind of. If we're gonna dig it out, we gotta get that pipe
Right,
ordered.
we
so
gotta
it's
have the
ready.
pipe ordered by,
And we gotta find somebody.
so we always have Holloways. This year they didn't bid us, so I can't do that. It's gonna be too big of a project. And I don't understand why they didn't bid it. I never asked Levi. So, but it's something that's gonna happen next year. Here's the project and do a bid. And I figured I'd have Alltech look at it so they can tell everybody how many yards of fill they gotta remove, what they gotta put in. Of course, that adds to the cost too. But then it's done right, that pipe has to be. I mean, takes a lot of water and I don't want.
Well, and that's probably the problem with trying to line it too. There's no way to divert that water.
No.
We gotta hope that it's dry until that sets up.
Yeah, so when we first looked at this, it's been pretty dry, but there's always water running there. The tiles run in it from the west end.
Yeah.
We could walk across the creek, step over the water, go through the pipe, very little water, but there's water running through it. Which they'll have to build a pit and they'll have to pump the water around it to keep it
In August,
dry.
that
It's
little
not-
bit of water, yes.
Right, I mean, there's no way we could work on it now anyway,
It'd be an August job.
if we're lucky.
Yeah, that'd be a time when.
I mean, the only thing, that
Chances
water
are-
doesn't come from the river,
Yeah,
you know, it's creek fed, so. That's a good thing, except for it backed up from the river to the outlet.
A lot of
on
water
the-
goes through
on-
there.
Not on Norwegian Avenue, there's a box culvert where it crosses, you know, where the gulch crosses under down there.
I'm just thinking that's the least chance of rain during the year is during August and,
July. and
what type,
August.
pardon me?
July and August there.
Yeah, late July, just when the tasseling out and needing a lot of rain.
Well, but I mean, then I didn't want it to get into September.
Yeah,
When we
that's
get
right.
that much more traffic too.
Yeah, that's true. But what material is the liner? Is that polyethylene,
Yeah.
PVC?
Yes, we've used on a smaller scale, about 2 miles north of there.
Yeah.
Actually comes out.
Is it the black stuff?
Yeah,
Polybutyl?
no, that was yellow,
Yeah.
but
okay.
it comes in on a reel.
Yeah.
And it's flat. They pull it through there and then they put heat and steam to it. Comes out and once it fits, they take the steam off it and they have a new pipe. This is actual, comes in 40-foot chunks and you have to slide it together. It locks like sewer pipe. Has 3 different lips on it. You just put it in, you keep pushing it through till it comes out. And the only thing I've seen is a video. I have not talked to anybody that used it before. And the plastic pipe that we have been using, that only goes 72-inch. So they don't make anything that big for, you know, to cut down on the cost. Cause the pipe is, you know, a third of the cost is gonna be the culvert itself.
But the only thing, if we lined it, then we don't know what kind of undermining we have.
Right, but they fix the undermining first. So they come in before they put the liner in, they'll use the flowable fill, stop the water, and they pump it in like, it's actually. I can't think of the word, I'm thinking, like a mud jacking. So that it's under pressure and they pump it in till it comes up in the pipe and then it's all sealed off. So then we have all the voids filled and then we put the liner in on top of that. And something right. Jackrite, Mudbright, something out of Sioux Falls. They did our West Main bridge, had a void under it, and that's what they did, come in and pump that up. So, I mean, we can do it that, fix it. But everything I'm talking about's added more money to it. And unfortunately, I can't get anybody to sit down. Here's what it's gonna cost. Our engineering firm and a couple other ones have never done a project, so.
Really?
So Alteg has looked at it then?
They have looked at what it would be to how much dirt to
Yeah.
take out of it. They're still kind of looking at the liner part of it. Two of them been down, walked through the pipe and stuff. But the actual liner is now being sold by True North, which was in our bid packet. And so we're good to go buying that, but we're good to go to buy the pipe also, the galvanized pipe, so.
That's what we'd replace it with if we excavated was a galvanized.
Yes, galvanized pipe. That pipe has been in there since the early 60s. My grandpa lived a couple miles north and I was about 6 or 7. He drove his old international pickup inside the pipe while I was sitting on the road. And so I kind of remember when that was, used to go down that gulch to a little concrete arch culvert down there. That's how steep that hill was. Have no idea where they come up with all the fill, but so the pipe has got its use. And it's not, doesn't seem like it's corrosive water because it doesn't have time to sit there, so we weren't even gonna line it, you know, with polyurethane. You can get them lined, but
Is that what those pipes are by Bethel Hall? on
yeah,
Fallen
no,
Road?
no, those by Bethel Hall were actually plastic with a stainless steel insert in the center of it.
Fancy.
Those, that's why I was hoping they made them bigger.
Oh, they don't make them big
No,
enough. Okay.
that's the largest one they make is what we have by Bethel Hall, they're 72 inch. The other one we put west, or is it, that one's 60 inch. And the one we put on the west end of the Volund was 72.
Would it be cheaper to put 3 smaller ones in?
I guess, I don't know. It'd be a lot more excavating it, you know, cause it'd have to be so far apart. I can have them check.
Well, we only gotta put them a foot apart, right?
Well, you gotta be able to get in there and pack the soil.
Yeah.
They'd have to be, usually, you know, if we're putting in 72 inch pipe, we gotta leave 3.5 feet in between for compaction and stuff. Even if you put the flowable fill in there, you gotta get in there.
Right.
So I guess I'm just, so you're aware. And maybe at a future one, if somebody comes up with a better idea on all ears, but when Altig gets back to me on what they think it should be, it might be a different story to dig it out too, so. Holloway's just came, looked at it, measured it, and that's what he's saying he can do it for this year, so next year.
And you'd guess similar lifespan on either of the solutions, is that right? Would you guess it's a similar lifespan on either solution?
Yeah, I would think, maybe not that long, but there's just no stands there.
Yeah.
It goes through it, and goes through fast, and then the pipe sits there, so, you know, where we put new pipe in and 10 years later, the bottom's gone because of
Right.
the soil and the moisture is, that's where he's talking east of Bethel, that ate up concrete. So that's why we went with polyurethane culverts there, because metal wouldn't stand up to it either.
Yep.
All right, so we'll wait to hear further information on that. Anything else?
Just everything along the river is still closed. The road north of Meckling at a couple hours before I came in, is still open, but it's within 8 inches of coming up. It's still running over the dike on the west side, but it's slowed down. So it might hold. I'm not guaranteeing
Do you
for
have
how long or if it will, but we're watching it.
All right.
no known damage on the county roads yet?
Just
Can't see
debris.
them.
They're underwater.
Can't see them yet.
Are the 2 gravel roads. Well, I guess actually we have 4 gravel roads underwater. The one up north of Nutrien, that one. I can see the damage already, but it's nothing like it was in 19. But the ones down here on the Clay Creek, they usually don't go under on a normal year when we have flooding, but it's backing up. So everything from 19 to 457, all the crossings, they're all closed and the bridges completely underwater. So we won't know. Plus the bridge they're working on the University Road. That is the first time I seen that. You can't even see the bridge end markers on that. It's completely underwater.
So where's their trailer?
They got, I called them Saturday night at 7 o'clock
Okay.
and said, you better get here. or asked, do you want me to hook onto it? Oh, no, we'll be there. And they were just going over the hill when we pulled up on the south side to set up barricades. Everything on the bridge, the barrels, all that stuff, because it's a one lane closure. I don't know where they're at. Their phase 3 barricades are there. But, and all the trees we took out of Yachts Bridge are now laying on the road on the east side and the west side. I don't know where the ones on the east side went. So now we're working to the east of 19. There's the biggest log jam I ever seen there. We're up there trying to pull what we can out of that now. We got the one on the Clay Creek north of Meckling cleaned out yesterday
Did you see the log jam by Matt Olson's?
by Matt Olson.
Just off of University, that.
On
spur?
that going east there.
Yep.
Yes, there was. We can't
No.
get to it. And we'd already cleaned that out once,
I know,
so.
but there's logs sticking up in the air.
Yeah.
It's wild.
This one that's underwater on the north-south road, looks like there's 3 cottonwood trees sticking 20 feet above the guardrail, if the guardrail's even there. That's
Yep.
the only thing I'm worried about when.
That was pretty ugly over there. I was by up the Meckling Road when they fished 2 big trees out on the upstream side of that. That's key to keeping that from topping the road is keep that bridge.
Which was all cleaned out, if you
Yeah.
remember, right?
Yeah.
Ain't figured out where all those trees come from yet, but
They had 2.
they
on the
didn't come
truck
from
that-
Yankton County because we don't have
No,
anything over there. It had to be from there to the county line.
yeah, no, they were, I was by there about 40 minutes before. You guys had the hoe pre-positioned there already in a truck and I saw those trees there and you showed up by the time I was back and had them out of the way already.
Yeah, we had to use the backhoe on that bridge, just the backhoe itself.
Yeah,
The bridge just bouncing. We didn't think it would handle our excavator.
yeah.
And we're taking our excavator up to the Ballin Road. This is stuff we can reach ourselves, so
Yeah,
thank goodness. We don't have to rely on somebody else to come. Hard to get those guys when they're already busy, so. But nope, that's all I have, so.
All right, well, thank you.
I just,
Yeah, I had a question.
one
as well.
question.
Yeah, Go ahead.
Well, it's gonna be for Rod and Lane. Because, so if Union County happens to need assistance, I know it's gonna be 100%, we're gonna have to look at it as 100% our bill,
No,
whatever we do.
yeah.
no. No,
No? Okay,
we done that last time for Union County
okay,
and they reimbursed us. And I've already told Yankton and Union,
okay.
if they need help, we're available. If
If we're not,
If
there.
we're available, yeah.
available,
Yeah,
we hauled sand down there
okay,
in 11.
Yep.
And Raymond Rogo was the superintendent and emergency manager. And then, I don't know, it took a year, but he came back and, I mean, paid for as much as FEMA
yeah,
paid, so.
And that's what even though it comes from us, it would be reimbursable expense to go through the.
well, I thought eventually it might happen, but I didn't know
Oh,
if we
yeah.
needed to look at it as we're footing the bill to begin with.
That's probably a good way to look at it because they are still fighting 2019 payments, so it. could be
Don't
either.
count that bird that's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I mean,
don't count it on next year's revenue side of the budget. So-
Right, and I mean, we help each other out as much as we can. And they got a mess down there with the Big Sioux. We're lucky the Vermillions. Everything south of Dakota Street. Not so good, probably. I don't know. I haven't been down there, but I'm sure Walker's Landing and had substantial washouts, I would imagine.
continuing.
Yeah, mounts and walkers have issues. And I haven't heard nobody from the Ponderosa's contacted me yet. So,
Got a Ponderosa representative.
Yeah.
okay.
Well, yeah, I was just,
Is, that's the low side by us, so it's.
Oh, yeah, by a
So
long
it's
ways.
Eating a lot of that water.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And the channel went that way anyway.
Right.
So
Right.
now,
It's holding.
have you heard, I thought I heard something on WNX that they're gonna start releasing more water out of Gavin's Point. Have you heard anything?
They have.
They
Already.
already have. The
Oh,
thing
okay.
to realize is that it is still less than what it was 3 days ago.
Okay, okay. I
I
didn't
thought-
know what.
Weren't they at 38? Cause they went to 45.
I haven't seen, the last I knew was 24, which was
So they were
yesterday.
sending 15 through the electrical plant.
Yep.
And then they were releasing 25 through the gates. That's what I read. That might not be correct.
No, what it amounts to is that they stopped the water coming down. And there's no, all of this happened in this area, so there's tons of storage
in Fort Randall.
at Fort Randall.
Right, but they said the
So-
Niobrara and
Right, the Niobrara and all that. What they're doing is they're cutting the water out of the turbines and sending it over the spillway so that they can raise the gates. And then that creates more free space.
right.
So they may be releasing a little bit more, but the core is actually creating storage.
Yes,
So,
it's still way less than it was in 2011.
oh.
yeah. Where they were
by
completely-
multiples.
Yeah.
Yeah, any real rise that you're seeing on the Missouri around here is the James and the Vermilion.
Yeah, the Vermilion had, well, so I guess we shouldn't trust those gauge numbers. When I was looking at that, I was like, there's twice as much water going through the Vermilion River as the Missouri according to these hydrographs right now, but
They're
you
not
were saying that the gauge is out, right?
Well,
It's at 56,000.
when there's one
feet per
great
second
big
was-
jump,
Right,
that generally means that there's debris in the tubes.
gotcha.
And so,
And the flow calculations are probably based on that stage,
yeah,
right? So
yes,
so when they
because
said it
they-
jumped to 58,000 cubic feet per second coming through the Vermilion, that's not probably accurate.
it's not accurate, but it's moving.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of water running through there. Part of that too, I just looked at them. Davis and everybody is still dropping. I mean, Davis, Hurley areas, just, I mean, they're probably technically in just a moderate now. I told Travis this morning, there's a Facebook thing of a guy checking cows somewhere up by 46 and 19 out in a boat.
Yeah.
And you see road everywhere now,
Alright.
so it's coming down there too.
Nice.
There's still a lot of water to come.
Yes, but it's
Oh, yeah.
That was Tom.
not worse. I can live with.
Yeah.
That was checking cows, got a boat to go over. He drove his tractor over there with a couple bales of hay, where he used to live on 46 or just
Yeah.
west. He said he got lucky, they made it, so.
And two things for the park board, and one of them relates to Rod. Would you mind if I address that part of that so that you can get on to next things? Yeah, hopefully just quick, but previously, Brett Balloway, who's the manager down there, had requested, asked whether we could use any county gravel on repairing some of the county-owned property down there. And the decision that I believe we came to was, as long as it doesn't cost us anything. So if we get reimbursed as a county for labor and any material that they use, that'd be something that the commission would be comfortable with. And I just wanted to readdress that because it's come up again. And I've had a few calls where, Fred's calling me and Rod's calling me, and I just wanted to discuss it with the full commission and see if anybody had any issues with that. It's convenient having them right around the corner. So, and it's property we own. And so if you guys are comfortable with that, the money comes out of the park board budget.
And just so you know, after we spoke,
Yep.
Larry went with, is it Fred?
Yeah, Fred Balloway.
Okay, so they went and looked, and it was not 3 loads of gravel,
Okay.
it was 3 spots. And what he wants to spread is gonna be more like 10 loads of gravel,
Okay.
which just for the gravel's a little over $1,200.
Okay.
So
Yep.
if you guys are still fine, but maybe you and Fred should go take a look, or if you don't, if Fred's good enough. Of course, right now. We're a little.
You got other
busy,
things on
but
your
I
plate,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
But not as far as like. We could turn a truck loose. The only thing, we don't know how we could spread it.
Okay.
You might want to get together
Yeah.
after the meeting.
But in general, is the
Work that
commission
out.
comfortable with that arrangement? And if so, then I'll
I
just
mean,
continue.
we've done
working
it
with
before,
Rod
we just-
and Fred
You
and-
just build the park board.
Just build the
Yep.
parkboard.
so,
We just need permission from. You guys. I mean, I told Fred that.
Yep.
He had to call me. I couldn't just take Fred's word.
Yep.
on We're gonna do it without knowledge.
We,
All right.
we can't do that today, but we can
Yeah.
let them do it
Yeah.
and approve it next week.
Well, when
Yeah, I
they
don't-
got time to do it, you know, it could
right.
be next
No,
week. or-
this
I
is
don't
not
think
the
we'll get it.
priority right now.
No, I understand that, but if, you know, if he was gonna turn somebody loose before next meeting. We can
Yeah.
allow them to do it and then just approve that we have.
Okay.
Give-
Thank you. Yeah, I just did,
Formal
before you left, I wanted to make sure that we
Okay,
I
well, I'll contact
visited that with
you.
everybody here. So, yep,
I'll contact you when I think it looks like we got time.
that sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Carrie. Got a post-election audit report.
I think we skipped over Scott.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I
Scott.
jumped way ahead there, so we probably
Scott,
need to go back.
Go ahead.
Oh, maybe I got bumped.
Elevator Modernization Project Bid Award.
All right, so I read through both the contracts, one from Kone, who is our previous service provider, and the other one from Schumacher. And for the original spec, to me, they both read the same as far as the equipment that's being replaced, et cetera, et cetera. So, and Schumacher being the low bid on the original spec by $8,000. So we had one bid at 120,394, another one at 128,000. So, yeah, Schumacher's low bid. I think we know after Schumacher was here at the last meeting that there's a lot of incidentals. When you read both contracts and you start getting into their verbiage, there's all these code requirements that pertain to the building that any other state would be required to meet them. But South Dakota, we don't have an elevator authority or inspector. So as he pointed out, if you just want to sign on the dotted line and waive those, you can. But obviously puts all the liability in our lap on that kind of deal. So, excuse me, with Schumacher, we got a lot more alternates to look at because they just kind of look things over with a finer tooth comb than Kone did. Kone was here and looked at it and just basically in their contract said, here's things you have to upgrade. And so Schumacher took it a step further and threw out several different options. So we have a true number of what we're looking at. We figured originally it was around 150,000 per the spec. That came in at 120,394. There was an option too, because I put the spec out per spec, and then I had a line item there, you know, a number for upgrading the inside of the cab. So per spec from Schumacher was 120,394, and the option per spec in the cab alternate was 144,084. So if we get down to the real brass tacks of the whole thing, where the Todd from Schumacher's here and spoke about the modifications to the building that need to be done. To point out some of those, like that's required to be a separate room back there, climate controlled. There was other things too involved in there that needed to be done to meet the code. Comes at 223,502. There was talk about the building a soffit around the waistline that's in there and the 2 3/4 inch water lines that are in there. That would be an additional 10,508. would be in the total cost of the project at $234,010. So, which is a lot more than 150 that we were looking at. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the numbers. If, you know, if we don't want to box in the sewer lines, you know, it'd be 10,508 less. There's also conversation being had with, we're trying to, right now, per our last project, there's 2 smoke detectors in there that's required. There's also sprinklers lines in there. We're trying to find out if those sprinkler lines are required in there, since there are 2 smokes, if they could be taken out. That would reduce the cost of the project some, because with, obviously you got water and electricity doesn't mix real well, so it has to be shunt trip devices in there if the sprinklers stay. And that would reduce the cost some if we can get a clarification from somebody on whether they need to be in there. Reached out to state inspectors. I called the electrical engineer on the last project. He told me he moved me on to the mechanical engineer who's on vacation. So I'm trying to get a clarification on that. If we could remove those, that might save some money. How much? They're not telling me, but it does make the cost of the electrical part jump significantly because of that. So that's where we are today with the
So we're
numbers.
still looking for a little more information.
Well, I think we got everything right here, you know, that we need, you know, as far as what the real cost of the tire project is going to be going forward. If we were to do the project today and have to install the shunt devices and or to box in those waste and water lines, we're looking at $235,000 approximately, basically. 234,010 to be exact.
And the Coney estimate left open like building. improvements
Yeah.
without specifying a number. So they're saying their project, as they spec'd it, was 150.
Right.
But then there's we're responsible for any cost beyond that, and do you feel that there could be another or $80,000 of expense involved in doing the other improvements?
Yeah.
It
I mean,
seems like it's me, right?
because Schumacher's brought subcontractors in that they use to rectify these,
So really, they have a more complete
right,
bid for what
complete
probably
picture.
needs to be done, right?
Because he's brought his subs in that they work with. And they looked the project over and gave them numbers saying, okay, this is what this was gonna take to bring the shaft up to code. This was gonna take to bring your mechanical room up to code, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we get the true number, 234,010. So.
Does anybody know what the risk of a fire originating that elevator shaft, one like ours is?
In the shaft or in the room? There's no sprinkler system in the shaft.
Okay.
There is a smoke at each landing. That's code. But there's no sprinkler in the shaft.
I see. So
So obviously, I guess, I'm assuming it's not required, so,
it's in the control rooms where the
Right.
sprinkler is. Okay.
right.
What's the risk of a fire originating in there? Got some hot electrics.
Yeah, I would think it'd be less with the newer system because, it's digital, electronic versus those contacts sitting there flipping them off and on all day long. But you got your pump, you got your motor there, we got oil, we got heat,
Yeah,
And then put 30 years on it.
yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, he says that that new pump and everything's gonna be half the size of what's here now. Everything's gotten more efficient and seems smaller, but there's always that risk, I wish I could give you a number of what you'd save by not putting the shunt trips in there. I think I heard a number one time, like, upwards of 10 grand, if not more. They get real expensive.
Wow.
Versus just a regular old disconnect switch. So.
That's, well, it's one of those projects that needs to get done.
Yeah.
Like I say, Kone's been our service provider. I just felt like they didn't really step up to the plate. I mean, they didn't offer to come to the commission meeting or anything like that, like Schumacher did. Yeah, I just had, if I hadn't read through that, Coney, their first estimate they sent in for budgetary purposes and read all those. Here's what you're responsible for. We'd really be in the dark today of going forward on this project. So.
Do we have money in the building fund for this?
I think there is enough left.
We've pretty much wrapped up the other projects.
Well, we got another
Yeah, I
change.
haven't
order
gotten the
coming.
final, the final for the other project yet, so.
Yeah.
Have
but I
we-
do think there's gonna be some left.
Have you cut a final check for that project yet? Okay,
Got
don't,
another change.
Well, I mean,
so.
provided the funds are available, it makes sense to do this. That elevator makes me nervous.
Let me just pull up my spreadsheet real quick. I've been keeping one.
So just one other thing too, I don't know if this is really that's significant to the commissioners or not, but by boxing in those lines, your elevator is gonna be 2 inches narrower, so.
Tighten my belt.
We do.
So,
Okay, so there are funds.
But it, to the tune of what? How many dollars?
It's about 400,000
Okay.
left in there.
So we can do whatever option we want.
Yeah.
So how long did that put the? elevator out of service?
they say figure 1 week per floor, so 4 weeks. I'd say between 4 and 5.
I imagine, of course, just general folks getting up to the offices and getting up to the courtroom.
Right.
Sheriff's office and transports. They're not gonna, I can't speak for Andy, but we're always told, and it's standard practice, you never have inmates that are handcuffed walking up there. So. I don't know what considerations, I don't think that's a consideration for the day necessarily, other than. Timing is it.
Yeah, well, the judges will have to make that decision if they want to move to El Point or.
Yeah, 'cause I think we put a deadline on like March 30, completion by March 31st.
So you would work with the judges on timing.
Yeah. I think that's one reason we picked that date was so we'd have time to get those details worked out.
Haven't given us their 2025 schedules yet, so they schedule out their entire calendar year. I guess I get it in the next 8 weeks for sure, would be my guess, that in the next 8 weeks, all 3 judges that regularly hold the court here have their entire 2025 schedule in place. So it'd be prudent to get in touch with them as soon as possible, perhaps if this is a 2025 project, they can, we can try to
Schedule around it.
ask them to kind of adjust their court schedule as much as possible.
So do you need a vote from us today?
Yeah, I need a signature.
Yeah.
All right.
We need to accept some bid if that's what we're
Yeah.
gonna do.
Yep.
And are we doing alternates then? Or?
Well, I think the bottom line that you're suggesting would be that $234,010.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna cover all our bases. I mean, hopefully there aren't any incidentals. I talked to the guy today and he said that's pretty much covers it unless something really weird pops up, but.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Need to step into the restroom for just a moment. I
Okay.
apologize. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you much.
So,
Oh,
then we've got,
Scott, what's the purpose of boxing in the sewer and water lines?
it's code. It's an elevator code, if you will. We don't have an elevator authority, but South Dakota has adopted, I think, the International Elevator Code, and that's the code.
Is that sewer line updated?
It's cast iron, I'm assuming. It looks newer than what I've seen elsewhere. back in the 60s, 65, when they turned that into an elevator shaft, that was existing, they took it out and replaced it. But I have reached out to a couple of contractors that line sewer lines. So, that was one thing I talked, 3 or 4 meetings back. I think it was 30 grand to get things lined in the building. So at that time that would get lined, and both contractors tell me you line them, it's basically lifetime. It's not gonna give you any problems. So they say. So.
Well, it shouldn't be. If it's cast, it's pretty much just a straight downfall. There's
Right,
setting
right,
water in
right.
it, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like a horizontal, it's vertical, but. Right.
All right, so we've got a change order. And these are previously approved. And this is a new contract that we need to sign. It includes the change order, and it's $2,730,933.
I move to approve.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I mean, this is pretty much just signing the contract. We've already discussed, I think, all the individual changes. So hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So Carrie.
So now I'm in the hot seat.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a simple one for you guys. We conducted our post-election audit yesterday and, we had a board of 5 bipartisan board of 5 individuals. And they manually counted the Democratic presidential race in Central Ward and also the Republican District 17 Senate race in Central Ward, just like we drew on canvas day from the bowl. And they perfectly matched the tabulator results from election night.
Great.
Excellent. No surprises. Linnea.
Oh, I had one question about that. Did you have members of the public come in
I
and
did
attend and
not, and
watch?
I was a little
Okay.
disappointed about that. I had
Yep.
hoped that we would have some people come and watch, but we did not.
I
Dick was
said,
there,
I
but.
said hi twice. I said hi and then I said, everybody's smiling. That's a good sign.
Yep. Oh, that is a good sign. I like that. Thank you.
All right.
Pictometry contract. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at it. I did send it to Michael and we discussed any concerns he had. It was just about terminating the agreement at the
Yeah.
end of the life of the agreement, I think was
Oh.
kind of the question, which is understandable. Once your contract's up, you usually lose that service, but we've been working with Eagle View or Pictometry since 2012. They've been really good partners for us, super useful software resource. Currently have 73 people that use Connect Explorer. I did not count up how many people use Beacon, but the imagery from this flyover is what we use in our Beacon imagery. About every 3 years, we have a new flyover, so we usually revisit the agreement. This year I was able to talk to them at our annual conference up in Aberdeen, and they have some new, it's like their web software is new this year, or it will be new next year, I guess, with our new flyover. Instead of Connect Explorer, it will be Cloud Explorer. Much more user-friendly, better access to the imagery, and the support for that is actually a little bit cheaper. So the first thing that you would need to sign is the amendment to our existing contract. This would be the third flight of a 9-year agreement, but the amendment essentially starts a new 6-year agreement with new pricing for those 6 years. That includes that Cloud Explorer instead of Connect Explorer.
How does it compare to the previous cost?
So the biggest thing that I saw, the software is what you're asking about specifically, or the contract?
So I guess the contract, although the software is rolled into that, is that correct?
It is. It's
Okay.
rolled into it.
So yeah, so both then, please.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So, the biggest difference would be that we're amending the previous contract to include cloud instead of just Connect. We would still have our support for Connect and
Okay.
access to it. They're also uploading archived imagery into cloud. So we wouldn't just have our next flyover in cloud. We would have, I believe they said there was 6 years worth of imagery that they could upload into cloud as well. So we would have imagery back to 2018 available in the new web software. And then I think the major part that I noticed that was different about the contract is they're actually adding a clause related to disaster response.
That's new.
They offer free flyovers for pretty major natural disasters and then discounts for minor disasters. I mean, what we're going through right now is not by any means a minor disaster, but it would qualify for like a discounted flight under the new contract. So say in 4 years, we have another natural disaster and we would want aerial imagery of that, we could qualify for a discount on that flight with the new contract. It's something they've added.
But that's optional. So the one is included if it's major, they just do it for us and it's a part of the package.
Yep.
And there wouldn't be savings if we left that off or something, but then optionally, if we decided that it was valuable, although from Wayne's discussion, it sounds like probably most of the time aerial photography isn't what's most important. It's more important to have reports on the ground from individuals affected or.
Yep. And that's something, I mean, if we were to come to that, that's something Lane and I could certainly work with Eagle View on. Again, it's moving forward from the signing, so we don't have that option right now this week.
Yeah.
This is moving forward, and I think it's a great thing that they added it for the same cost of the contract that we signed 3 years ago.
Oh, so that was, so when I was wondering about, so the annual cost is unchanged from 3 years ago?
It's actually down by like $30 or so.
Right.
It's not a significant saving, but I think it's great that rather than just lock us in for 3 more years.
Yeah,
and then
in real dollars, it's a savings every year.
Yeah,
right?
so like in 2027, our cost doesn't change for that next 3-year flight. So we wouldn't be looking at a cost change until 2029 or later.
Yeah, and just, I use it all the time.
Okay.
I run the phone app all the time. Dick is the only other person that I've ever seen besides me that puts the contour lines in.
Yeah.
So we actually know where our elevation changes are. Yeah, it's useful as far as a lot of times that flyover may not be timely enough for what we need on the disaster, but what it will do is like 300th Street, that floods every year. It'll be able to give us documentation of that particular time, what it was prior to if we want to go after mitigation dollars. We actually have something that can show that kind of stuff. As far as reimbursement for damage, and like what's going on now, it's the pictures of it at the time right there going, we need gravel right here and this is why.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, I use it all the time.
Yeah.
Support it.
And I was impressed that it's unlimited users, right? Is that right? Or you can make as many accounts as we need. So this is something that can be utilized by your office. And in conversations with Drew, it sounds like pictometry frequently is how they learn about a building permit that didn't get requested or something like that. So is that, does he have an access as well? Does he use it in his office?
Yep, so we have a few different partners that we work with on this. I have contacted them, haven't heard back yet on whether or not they're partnering with it in the future. But we've had longstanding partnerships with the city, actually paying for a portion of it, the VCDC, Clay Rural Water, and Clay Union Electric. So those are the 4 that have partnered with us since 2012. So since we brought Eagle View to Clay County, they have been partners with that. So I am working with them again to make sure that they're aware of their option to opt into this partnership again. And have heard really good things from the city, especially their new code enforcement loves Connect. The contour lines are actually only available in Connect because they do that side imagery, not just top down. So like our GIS program, we don't have contour lines in that, but we can use them in Connect. And we've done that in the past for like ag adjustments, property appeals, that kind of thing.
Cool.
That'll still be available in cloud then?
Yes, and I would say much more user friendly in cloud.
Yeah.
I know you've used it quite a bit, you know, when you're scanning and the image kind of goes away because they capture images and overlay them.
Yeah.
But if you're scrolling on the map, you get to the edge of an image and you kind of have to jiggle it to get to the next one. Cloud is seamless. So it's essentially like working, it's amazing. I love it. And with that, they will continue to do the luncheon. I know that makes you.
That will be good.
Oh, it was amazing. We got to see it in action at conference. I'm really excited. So again, we won't get that cloud until our flyover next spring. However, they are going to do continued lunch and learns for us. We have one on the calendar for Tuesday, August 27th, and all of our partners and users are absolutely welcome to come to that. If any of you don't have access to Connect and want access to Connect, stop into my office. We can get you set up with that.
And I would encourage that because we can create and place our own shape files in it. So I have the current FEMA floodplain maps are in it. The proposed maps are in it, and then you can divide it out by different flood zones. Drew has put the county's zoning in it.
Nice.
So we can create and add to it whatever.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
And same goes for those partners. I mean, if the
Yes.
city wanted to create a layer that they have in their Connect, they can do that.
Yep.
If rural water wanted a layer in theirs, they can do that.
Awesome.
and it uses, South Dakota is one of the few states that, it was right around 2012, paid to have a LiDAR done of the state.
No
So,
kidding.
so the elevations in it are LiDAR driven. So we're probably elevation wise the most accurate
Yeah,
state
that's
in the
awesome.
area.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent materials.
Well, I moved to authorize the chair to sign the contract.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second, and this would be to sign the contract and its amendment.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Any further discussion?
No, I think it's well worth it, as Lane said, that I used it to help calculate which landowners should be contributing to Clay Creek ditch. And just in the last week, during flooding, why the area in northern, on the northern edge of the floodplain and the Missouri River floodplain north of Meckling is that's all flooded, but it's not flooded at Meckling. It's because Clay Creek ditch is what we call a Yazoo stream. In other words, the main floodplain was created by the Missouri River, which is now clear to the south. And often little tributaries will end up being the draining half or more of the floodplain, like Clay Creek ditch does now. Because of flooding deposits, the center of the floodplain is higher than either side. So I think there are 4 different people that I did my Yazoo explanation of why it's flooding up there and not at Meckling. Yeah.
Right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And I would just like to note, Betty, there is 2 spots on the actual contract to sign. So if you have questions about where you need signatures, just.
Okay,
there we go.
thank you. Lane, you're up next. Disaster declaration resolution.
Yep, I have not seen the final version yet, but I talked with Carrie this morning and I think the wording will work. We
I
didn't
can
put
read it. I can read it to you quick.
yeah, please do.
Okay, just that section that we were kind of tweaking. Whereas the immediate and continuing impact of the rains from the June 2024 storms caused pooling of water and flooding that damaged roads, culverts, bridges, and other public infrastructure throughout Clay County.
Yep, this is step number 1 of any possible reimbursed funds. And it does not hurt anything. We can declare disaster anytime we want. This just gets us on the map right away. I have notified all the townships. They are tracking damages as possible. Rod is tracking damages as possible. The city is going to have some real damage when all of this is done. But anyway, once we should have no problem meeting the thresholds. And with McCook and stuff like that, there should be no problem with the state meeting thresholds. So, this is the only way to go.
What's the threshold for our county?
They raised it's based on per capita, and for some reason, I've got 323 per capita stuck in my head. It comes out to right around 68,000 that we have to come up with.
Just the sewer line in Vermillion is gonna be at least a couple million.
Yeah, and the state threshold is 1.34, something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's gonna be a spendy situation.
I move to declare a disaster.
All right, there's a motion and a second to declare a disaster. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work these last few days. I know it's been waiting.
Yeah, I hope you get a nap soon.
Nap is one thing. I just need this big hunk of pneumonia to kick out, so.
Yeah.
Feel that way, but, Carrie, if you could just email that to me and I'll send it out to Peter.
Yep.
So, all right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Michael, your statistics report.
Yeah, so this is a report that Lexi had created, is my understanding. Date backs to 2015. I think all of the data really kind of goes back that far. Is that correct? Well, the first one, case reviewed by year, she went all the way back to 2007. So that's page 1. If you want to take a look at that, I just mostly want to get you guys kind of an understanding of where the office is right now. Julianne Severson, who's interning for me this year, compiled the data from 2023. Her and I went over it, feel comfortable that it's accurate, and kind of gives everybody a good understanding and continuation of the numbers that have already been in place. So I think it's interesting to see the tracking. Again, you look at the page 1, the case review by year, and you're seeing a pretty substantial jump, you know, from 2007 up to 2016. And now we've kind of lingered, you know, you do see a little bit of movement there from 2016 on, but obviously since 2020, we've been reviewing roughly 825 cases per year. That's, you know, going back to 2007, 2008, 2009, that number was under 600. So substantial jump. You know, I'm sure that tracks with population growth, you know, with the growth of law enforcement agencies as well. I don't want to speak for law enforcement agencies, but I do think it's interesting. I think that you see there has been a decline. We were kind of more along the lines of 900 to 1,000 cases being reviewed in 2017, 2018, 2019, and now we're down about 100 cases or maybe a little less. I think that common sense to me dictates that law enforcement hasn't been at full capacity in that time frame, and so things like DUIs and even just class 2 misdemeanor stop sign violations or other cases aren't being either caught at all or investigated well enough to eventually make a case up to my office.
So was that 4-year period the only time that we've been at full capacity? Because as I kind of looked at this one, I saw, you know, if I was gonna put a trend line through here, if you took out 2016 to 2020, you'd have a pretty level, you know, not
There is,
exponential
absolutely.
growth curve. And so I was expecting that I was wondering what caused the blip more than why are we down from it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you're right. There is more exponential growth if you get rid of that. I think that at that time, I know in that 2018 timeframe, there was full capacity.
Okay.
There was also a difference in leadership over at the University Police Department. And I think some of that may be a contributor. Right now, the university has more capacity now to handle some of these, especially smaller violations, alcohol violations or thefts, first time offenders type stuff that they handle internally that they have a whole department, you know, that our office doesn't even receive that report. So they handle some things in a more academic way that occurs with students on campus that years previously were being sent directly to the state's attorney's office. So that may also have an impact on some of that as well. But yeah, and Marcy's Law increase. I don't know how much, I don't think Marcy's Law coming into effect really increases the number of cases though that my office sees. It just impacts how we go about working through cases because we have a lot more mandatory victim notification and cooperation. But this is just cases that we reviewed. So these are cases law enforcement sent up the ladder to our office.
Do you think that the SB 73 has an impact? I mean, timing wise, it looks like it's at the beginning of that curve, but I don't know if that's.
Not a whole lot, 'cause you'll see later on the juvenile numbers, so that only affects juvenile cases, so. Not in a way that is substantial to me from the way that I analyze this, this chart. I think it probably that 2018, 2017, 2018, 2019 jump has more to do with full capacity of law enforcement. I think if we return to last, I knew the sheriff's office right now is down a deputy, which is substantial, of the department of 7.
Mhm.
The police department's down 4.
Wow.
So.
And they've had a real hiring spree, it seemed like.
They
lately, too,
have,
but, yeah.
unfortunately, I think they've had, it's been filling the gaps, but people are leaving and coming in for whatever reason. It's, the nature of the job kind of deal. So once they get into a better position as far as full capacity, which they were in that 2016, 2017, 2018 timeframe, I imagine that these numbers probably go back up to that 900,000 number that we were seeing before. I think that was probably really, I think page 1 and page 2 of this 8-page document is probably the most telling. You'll see if you go to page 2, the type of cases that we're reviewing, the trend since 2015 and well before that, I have no doubt, is that the vast majority of the cases are the class 1 misdemeanor cases. Those are DUIs and intentional damage to property and petty thefts and assaults that don't amount to aggravated assault. So that has always kind of been our high mark. You'll see the misdemeanor case or the felony caseload is at, in 2023 was at 144. That tracks really well. 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. And again, I think those numbers being inflated in 2018, 2019. Interesting, certainly, to kind of figure out why. I think, again, the only real thing I can come up with is law enforcement capacity. I think the more telling information on the second page as it relates to juvenile cases, which again, you brought up SB 73 back in 2016. So if you look at that, our juvenile case numbers, and this may give more credence to your idea, Jeffrey, was 13 cases back in 2016. You're seeing substantial growth in that caseload. After Senate Bill 73 passed, that gave us more teeth, I guess, if you would, in the juvenile system. It's aimed at restoration with juveniles, but we kind of get them formally into the system. Of course, we have things right now like teen court,
Yep.
and hopefully we're going to have an even more opportunities in youth diversion as well, which would likely also increase these numbers again. But so the Senate Bill 73, although it looks like the cases were, there's more naughty kids or we're being worse off on kids, that's not really true. It's just that we're bringing them in and kind of more formally ensuring that things are going well with them, with a little more oversight. And then the abuse and neglect cases, we have, I think last time I checked, 18 active abuse and neglect cases. Those take, those numbers are small, right? I mean, you look back 2015, we had 6. In 2016, we had 5. 2017, we had 9. 2018, we had 8. 2019, we had 9. And then you saw 6 and 4 in 20 and 21. We have had a huge increase in abuse and neglect cases, and that trend is continuing into 2024. 12 in 2022, 11 in 2023. I'm not sure what we're at right now, but we're at 18 active, roughly. And those cases take 18 months or so to run through the system, and a whole lot of work from my office and everyone else involved, which is public defender usually, and at least 1 or 2 other attorneys.
Are you guys dealing with many appeals of those? Because that was the one area that the new state body is going to jump on right away, but I didn't know what impact that might have locally.
Not locally at this point, we haven't had any that I'm aware of, certainly since I've been here. So no impact would be the answer right now, but certainly, there's a chance that it would down the road. There's always a chance for that. But so even though those numbers are small, that takes up a very large portion of a caseload. When we're still in a transition phase, of course, with Samantha being gone and Caitlin taking over some felony cases. But when we were at capacity, when I began here, Caitlin's entire workload was misdemeanor cases and then juvenile and abuse and neglect. And most of those juvenile numbers, a lot of those were not really hers. They were going through teen court.
Okay.
So abuse and neglect and a misdemeanor caseload that's a full plate.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is the abuse and neglect cases, even though, if you're just looking at a chart, it doesn't look to be that substantial.
Which surprised me for 20 and 21 because I thought they were higher, because I know Lexi talked about the jump. Because of COVID, everybody was home.
Right.
All of a sudden abuse and neglect and assault went up.
Yeah, well, that all did happen. So some of that, if what's missing out of this page 2, then when you're thinking of it through that lens, is that if you go down to like not page 3, that's 3 and 4 felonies, go down all the way to page 6, which would be the class 1 misdemeanor offenses. Where there's a little carve out for contributing on the chart, so you'll see those. I guess I don't have those numbers squarely in front of me, but the contributing would be something that we might charge out, law enforcement might charge out an adult offender for some sort of, some negligence as it relates to their ability to take care of a child. So not everything amounts to abuse and neglect, but there's a lot of times where law enforcement may be having an increased call respond, they may be responding to a situation, maybe culminating with some sort of citation for contributing to abuse and neglect of a child, or also like not sending a child to school. I think all of those cases have increased, but that may not ultimately go all the way up to an abuse and neglect, formal abuse and neglect case in our office. So they're kind of two separate things.
Well, and then on that second page graph where it was 6 and 4 for 20 and 21. Are those just cases that were sent to the state's attorney's office?
These are cases sent up, yes.
But that doesn't mean they're prosecuted.
Right, these are cases that are sent up. Most of the time, the cases that, more generally speaking, the cases that are going to come across our desk that we're not going to, that maybe we'll decline to prosecute, would be those that are felonies or misdemeanors. Caitlin would be the one to answer that, but most of the time, by the time those cases are getting to us on an abuse and neglect case, we're not walking away from those cases. We're gonna let the court system handle it.
Yep.
We may look at a DUI and say, oh, this person's blood was under, or we may look at a theft case and say, oh yeah, that theft definitely occurred, but we definitely can't prove they're the ones who did it. So there may be reasons we may decline to prosecute a case, but with abuse and neglect cases, those come through the door, they're getting handled.
I didn't know if it was where somebody failed to follow through with
like failed
the
to
witness
report or something.
No, the witness just wasn't gonna press charges
sure,
anymore.
Sure.
And it gets dropped. I didn't know if that.
Yeah.
That's already hit your desk. It's showing.
Yep, it's showing. And yeah, and we'll especially those type of cases, we have some teeth, some subpoena abilities that will force people into being a little more, we'll be a little more forceful with some of our cases when it comes to witness willingness to participate. Of course, we like to not have to do that, but depending on the severity of the case and who's involved, children, we will push that a little bit beyond just, okay, you don't like it, too bad, you're still gonna be a part of it. So yeah, I think it's an interesting review. What kind of it shows me is that, that if we get up back to what's concerning to me is that, if we get back to that caseload that we were seeing in 2018, 2019, and then we continue with the trend of more abuse and neglect cases in the county, we're gonna have our hands full. If law enforcement gets up to speed, we could really have our hands full.
And you do a lot of thinking, it seems like, about other mitigation efforts and things. Are there things that we're not thinking about to try to decrease the incidences of abuse and neglect in the county? So that, like, we don't want to just say this is a force of nature, people commit crimes, it sucks, and it costs us a ton of money. If there's anything that we can do to invest money where a dollar goes farther than paying your office or paying officers to do it, we want to consider those things.
Well, we appreciate that. And, one thing that we do is, there's like a community response team that is currently in existence that I'm a part of, as well as my deputies and a lot of members of the community that are having direct interactions with children are. So that is a fairly new body. It's a few years old, and that really puts eyes and ears on all the kids and what's going on. So getting the school involved and preschools and law enforcement, my office involved to kind of all sit down and kind of have an understanding of where kids are at. That's probably been the most significant change. Of course, that's not dollars and cents, but it's just ensuring we all kind of have a more holistic, whole picture understanding, I guess, if you would, of like who these kids are, where they're at in the system, schools and, preschools, who maybe the kids are that are behind them or in front of them and how they're acting and reacting to situations that they're in. So, so I can't think of anything off the top of my head that, I don't think that money would necessarily help us. I think the big one was what you guys did, was that support for, more diversion with, youth with, Boys and Girls Club. Boys and Girls Club itself, certainly is having an impact on the lives of some of these kids that need to have some, maybe some control over them, certainly the younger kids. That's, I think those type of organizations and systems coming in have been a positive change. At this moment, probably the most, significant. The hardest part is, law enforcement goes into houses that are filthy and gross, but it's, there's a standard of living that we all live up to, but that doesn't mean it's illegal to live at a lesser standard. So it's, those cases can be difficult, and they're also very trying in that sense, because one person's belief in cleanliness and discipline is different from a second person's. So I think it'd be hard to quantify more assistance with money at this point, but certainly appreciate it and we'll be thoughtful of that.
Yeah.
Going forward.
It's like hiring more prosecutors and police officers and building larger facilities is the most expensive intervention. So
Right,
there's,
right.
there's ways that we can, nip things in the bud. We want to think about them.
Absolutely, right. Yep, I think that's a fair thing to consider. The last thing I'll mention is on this second page, you see class 2 misdemeanors. They're significantly down. I think that again also gives more consideration to law enforcement, because those are going to be your, speeding and no seatbelt, or no seatbelt, you pay offense, but speeding or stop sign violations, those type of things that are class 2 misdemeanors. Those don't all come up to our office either. A lot of those cases, those only come up, those are going to be issued with a POA, meaning you just pay your ticket and move on. So that's not saying we've had 153 citations for class 2 misdemeanors. That's saying 153 different times that offense came up to our office, either because it's mandatory, like not having a valid driver's license or not having insurance. Those cases, you can't just pay a fine. You have to go formally through the system. Or if you want to request a court trial or something to contest it, that then would also then formally come to our office. So those numbers would also rise with more law enforcement present in the community, probably back closer to the numbers we were seeing in the past. For whatever reason, we did see a decline in that in 2023. So.
One just little minor aside, because I really appreciate including this in here. So pages 1 and 2 have actual numbers of offenses. And I would have, I think, found the other graphs more meaningful if either there was both one with percentages and numbers, or maybe just adding a second graph that just has them broken down by number instead. I think that it's harder to watch trends when you're just comparing percentages out of 100% of the year in that year.
I felt the same way. And of course, this was a graph, this was a whole system that I took on, but I agree with you. I think that perhaps putting some time into putting some numbers in front of those statistics would be meaningful as well to be able to look at. So, but I mean, you'll see when you look at those felony and misdemeanor trends, they're mostly staying the same. We had more drug cases in 2023 than we had in 2022, which is concerning, but it tracks more along the lines of what we had in 2019, 2020, 2021, as far as percentages of the felony caseload. So I think last year's numbers were pretty consistent with what we were seeing at least back to 2015.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Where does truancy fit in? Is that?
Yeah, so truancy, well, that would fit in under the juvenile.
Yeah.
So it's gonna fall under a juvenile offense. So I don't know if that's not gonna be incorporated in the pie graph charts. It's gonna be on page 2.
Yeah.
With the types of cases. So it's gonna be, truancy would be a portion of that 102 juvenile offenses.
Right. And I think I read something not too long ago at the Vermillion schools, at least they're working a little harder to try to identify those that should be coming to school and aren't.
Yes.
And is thinking of it in terms of kind of a relic of homeschooling after the COVID issues, that some are not coming to school and not necessarily being properly educated at home, even though they ought to be.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if that contributes to this bump from 76 to 102 over the last 2 years at least.
I think it very well could. Actually, I'm confident that there is some correlation in
Yeah.
that. I mean, you've got people that there was a change in philosophies in some regard, at least in a portion of the population as to
Right.
what school is and what it should be. And we all kind of operated under this, a pretty straight line idea for decades and decades. And then when COVID happened, people started to have different philosophies and thought process on a lot of things. And that included schools that were, closed or pushed online for a better part of a year. So that has been a battle that I know that is being fought in the schools, and that does eventually find its way into our office when things like truancy do come down. And that's, generally the school resource officers. I know Aaron Armstrong with the sheriff's office and Officer Stanley with the PD. They're the ones who do a bulk of that work, at least on the law enforcement side, to get a report up to us. Most of that though is happening at the administration levels of the schools that are then reporting it to law enforcement and sending it up to us.
Yeah, I noticed that almost every week there's a report of investigation into truancy or failure to send kids to school.
Right. Yeah, and the schools do a really good job from what I've seen of tracking. Of course, they do, they've got their absences and tardies and, they track that so you can see a good information, in front of. When we get those reports, they're always full of very helpful information for being able to see a trend and understand, what those kids are, where those kids are at, and maybe why that's happening.
Yeah.
I think South Dakota needs to be better with their homeschooling. Because from my understanding, you can just go online and say your kid's in homeschool.
Hmm.
And then 2 weeks later, enroll them back in school. Some people are doing this back and forth.
Yeah, and the other game that often gets played is this, we moved and now we've moved back. And so it creates a lot more challenges and difficulties when you're saying you're in and out of a homeschool system or in and out of other school districts, especially outside of South Dakota and other states. Tracking all that becomes a lot more difficult. And sitting here, with a border to easily accessible to states, but even Minnesota, we should probably face that challenge more than a school district like in Chamberlain or Pierre does.
Yeah, we've got a high population turnover each year. It's about 20%. Yeah.
All right, well, that's the numbers. And yeah, I waited to get them to you. I mean, it's been 6 months into 2024, but we don't have, it's hard to get these numbers right at the end of the year. So once I was able to get them a full picture of 2023, I'll do the same thing for you in this time next year, probably maybe a little earlier, depending on if I have an intern or not into 2025 to see another trend.
All right.
And going to the line, I think the line graphs are very useful for doing longitudinal comparisons and using numbers instead of percentages perhaps. I was a little disappointed that the line graphs only went back to 2019.
Yeah, I know. This is a system that I certainly could have, it could be overhauled and it provide a little more information. So if I have, especially an intern that is interested and has some, maybe, not a lot of us go to law school because we're good statisticians, but if I find the right person.
Especially for longitudinal study, line graphs are very useful.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting so long to get to the podium there too.
Yeah. Well,
You're doing other stuff, aren't you? Yeah, that's good.
So property insurance.
So our insurance company comes around periodically, about every 3 years, just to assess where we're at with the values and things under our insurance policy. And they have made some recommendations for changes. What they basically found was that especially the courthouse is very undervalued for
what it is.
replacement value
Yeah.
for insurance purposes. And so I guess what I'm looking for from you all is a motion to accept their recommendations to adjust those policies accordingly so that we have adequate coverage.
So I was going through some of these numbers and hoping that I was interpreting the spreadsheet correctly here, but that seemed like what I was seeing. One that stuck out to me was the Fair and Extension Office being valued at 1.13 million and them recommending it should be 1.6 million. And to my mind, that just seemed it seemed like 1.1 million might already be high for what that facility is.
And you can, you can elect to leave it at the 1.1 if you would like. That's entirely up to you. their caveat was that especially with the courthouse, we have a blanket coverage, so. If we have taken their recommendations and we have, just a catastrophic loss. And replacing, for example, the courthouse. If that would end up costing more than what we have it valued for on our policy. They can pull from some of those other values, like the extension office, the highway shop. They can pull some of that other coverage to help cover the courthouse. If we don't take their recommendations, then we don't have that blanket coverage anymore. So there's kind of a benefit to that.
And these are annual quotes in the quote and difference lines, is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. So it's more than $1,000 a month bump on the courthouse building.
This has kind of been coming for a few years. I talked to them about it last time that they went through and checked out the buildings, and at that time, we were thinking we might have a bond issue. We maybe wouldn't have this building anymore, and so it was kind of like a wait and see. Now it's sort of catching up where we know we're gonna be here. We probably should update things a little bit.
Well, and then, and their notes here don't necessarily seem to reflect the MEP upgrades, is that they're referencing the new roof.
The roof and tuck pointing, yeah. Like I said, they only come through about every 3 years, and we hadn't really done a project at that point, so.
And the $703 difference between the new valuation for the fairgrounds building isn't much of a difference, but couple $100 a month.
So would somebody like to make a motion?
Yes. Should move to accept the recommendations.
Second. And that's raising our premium 21,000.
Raising it 14,000. Right? I think it's the difference over there, I believe. So 21 million is the difference in insured value.
Yeah.
14,507.69 is the difference in the quote, so.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to figure out here. is
Yep.
what the difference is.
Yeah, that's, I interpret it the same.
It's a lot of insured value. I mean, I think especially getting that extra, what is it, basically 8 million of insured value on the courthouse is probably a good idea.
Yeah, to replace the building at 18.
I think that's already.
We've already had a lesson in that.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Yeah, insurance has gone up dramatically across the country.
It has, and they.
That's just the
they
way it
did say
is.
that. They're well aware where they're sitting.
No, I mean, their
Yeah.
loss ratios
Yeah.
have gone up astronomically, largely because of climate change
At least we're in a
issues.
state that you can insure.
Yep,
$1,300 a month increase isn't.
Yeah.
so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we've got an abatement.
Oh, I do have one question on that, though,
Yeah.
on the insurance.
Yeah.
Does that start immediately or is that for next?
It would start immediately,
Okay.
so we would prorate for this year and then.
So we have an application for abatement or refund of taxes from, let's see, it's the Pulse of Life Church.
Pulse of Life Church.
Yeah.
When can
Linnea?
we learn more about that?
What's that?
What else can we learn about the abatement?
So
What do you-
Linnea, do you have information on this? Did this run through your office?
Yeah. They only became a church in November, correct?
So this one,
This is
did
the
get
church
my
and childcare
documents. You'll have to
facility both,
excuse
right?
me for not looking over them quite sooner.
So, and this is both the church and then the associated daycare. Is it the same building?
So I have, this is the application for property tax exemption that you guys approved at the County Board of Equalization. So it would be all of the land under the church, the building itself, and then they've got an outbuilding that they've just constructed for another nonprofit. So my understanding is that the church, the daycare, and this other nonprofit all qualify for either religious exemption or a 501c3 benevolent organization. So the daycare is actually registered within South Dakota. I found the certificate on Secretary of State's website that it is
501c3?
501c3
Okay.
nonprofit. So they have nonprofit status.
Okay.
So you approve that application at county boards. So for 2024 moving forward, they are tax exempt. So that's taxes payable in 2025. That does not cover taxes payable in 2024 because that is based on as the property stood November 1st of 2022. And at that point, it was still operating as a clinic.
Okay.
So this abatement, I believe, is covering those taxes payable in 2024, which is essentially for the 2023 year. You know, throwing a lot of numbers. So
No.
we're looking at 2023 and their purchase date in 2023.
And that's common. That's with the lag. I mean, this lag always throws everybody for a loop. If it's their first time buying or selling a house, you're like, wait, what? I'm paying the taxes on when I wasn't even there. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think for consistency, I think that we have an established rule about that, which is status on November 1st. So.
Yeah. So, with that, they did purchase it. I believe she put the purchase date on
She
there.
had purchased, they purchased and occupied 4/30/2023.
Yep. So they purchased it due to financing. They were not able to purchase it under the 501c3. So it was purchased by Glenn and Angela under their own private name. And then the warranty deed where it actually transferred to the church was filed for record on October 16th of 2023. And so our office is very much owned and occupied is kind of the two, like for everything we have, the state guidance is owned and occupied. And I don't have copies of it, but I do have the state law here, which is SDCL 10-4-19.1. I don't know, if Mike, did you have any of your?
I didn't bring anything with me. You and I worked through this months ago and we were on the same page. And I think that statute you decided to is the authority that makes it pretty clear that it has to be owned under one of those.
Either the 501c3 or the church.
You have to meet the criteria unless you are actually owned under that criteria, you don't fall under that umbrella, and that statute or thereabouts also have authority as to then, and once it goes into that 501c3 or whatever, you know, it is in this situation, there's a timeframe for when it happens in the middle of the month. There's also statutory authority in that same area that says when then. Yes, let's say October 5th, you go into, you go in and you change the title, and now you're owned under a 501c3. There is statute that then provides when you are now qualified for the tax exempt. So we follow through with state code to a T. You and I go through that tediously, and we both even do a little bit of additional research and had conversations with other folks to ensure that we were confident that we were.
Which it looked to me like they were applying for their abatement here as a church, not as a 501c3. And
And-
so.
And they
is the
covered their
church-
bases.
Is the
They have.
church been recognized by the IRS as a nonprofit church entity?
I have a federal exemption number. But there was some confusion in the process on whether that was the correct number. So I am recognizing the daycare as the tax exempt. It's similar to Center for Children and Families over there. They're also a 501c3. That's the one that I was able to find the correct documentation for.
see.
I did not end up digging further into the federal because again, this was all in the past. As far as my office is concerned, they were assessed for 2023 taxes payable in 2024. The abatement is kind of out of my hands. I could only move or recommend that they be tax exempt for 2024 moving forward.
Okay, so with all the state law that you looked up.
Yeah.
Are they eligible for an abatement?
My understanding is what's in front of you today is absolutely correct. I mean, and we didn't look down that avenue of whether or not that the church had been recognized, but the fact that there was, I assumed that it was, given the fact that there was that federal code. But I also agree that it would also qualify under the daycare, being a charitable or the daycare. So I believe that if this is the same document that Lynn had prepared, this was a 2-month.
We did not prepare this one.
Yeah,
This is
no.
the abatement. The one
Yeah.
that we were looking at was their actual tax
So I think
exempt
Travis is
Yeah.
wondering about authority and state law. What are the grounds by which we have the authority to grant an abatement even?
So I mean, you've got 6 months that they're wanting abated.
Yeah. Do you
Technically.
want me to go make copies of the state law real quick? So you could look at them? I know that. But I have it here. I can read it to you or. you
What's the
can look it up.
SDCL? We can all just type it in.
It's 10-4-19.1.
It might be easier to just send it to us. And we ask all the questions we have today. We don't have to decide on this today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably a good.
And we
idea.
can discuss it again next.
And
Because
I
what
can
I'm
look
wondering.
into it further, because again, I only looked at it 2024 moving forward. I did not. We talked about it. We knew that abatement could be in the pipeline, but that's not really my purview, so I did not dig into that as much, except for we agreed that once they purchased it as a church in October, they would qualify. Once it transferred from Glenn Pulse and Angela Jackson to Pulse of Life Church, I have the warranty deed. October 16th, 23, moving forward, they qualified, so they were allowed.
So
to
as of
apply
November
for it
1st,
At county
They were
boards.
good. Yep. Okay.
For the whole 6 months or the?
Again,
Be
that
two
we're
and a
kind of
half.
mixing.
Yeah, these
assessment.
are, she's talking to us totally, the thing we
Approved
approved
already.
in April
Yeah, okay.
for the following years.
I see.
And
This
in-
one's completely separate from that.
So she was trying to apply for the exempt status before assessment notices went out, I guess is kind of, like, as soon as they purchased it in April, she was coming in and filling out the property tax exempt status application. I can't do anything at that point. My office is November 1. That's our date of operation. So as of November 1st, it was owned and used by the church. As far as you approving the abatement because they qualified for that status before that, that's kind of your determination to make. I talked to Pennington County about it and his advice in a larger county that's seen this where it's transferring from non-exempt to exempt is that you have to approve the exempt status moving forward before you can look backwards,
Which we've already done.
which you've done. So that's kind of where my research stopped.
Okay, so my
so-
question would be then, are they eligible for an abatement? And to what extent, since they only started operating as a church October 15th or 16th? Because they're asking for 6 months.
And that
That's
is,
my question.
that was a,
One of my 2
Mhm.
questions. The other is the federal exemption certificate that they're presenting, is that for this church, for Pulse of Life in Vermillion, or is this the exemption certificate for their parent church in Sioux Falls?
And that's why I went with the daycare, because that's the one that's in Vermillion.
And they asked for an exemption as a church though, instead of a daycare center. And-
They both fall under nonprofit.
Yeah,
I guess where Michael and I landed, and you got, I'm not sure where this is he can look into the law and tell you what you can legally do. Where we landed is that they are exempt October 16th moving forward.
yeah.
So as far as the abatement goes, that's what I feel comfortable telling you is that in my view, they are exempt October 15th moving forward. There's kind of owned and used. My office is governed by owned and used. They were using it as a church and daycare before that date, but it was owned by Glenn and Angela due to financing.
so October 16th, 2023.
Is when it became officially
Oh.
churches.
Yeah, the ownership changed at that point
So there's-
to be in a church.
There's no real differentiation between daycare and church when it comes down to the statute. So
They're both,
just
I mean, it
nonprofits.
is, there's religious versus charitable. They read the same. It's just whether it's saying religious, whether it's saying charitable.
Okay.
So we're good on Dick's
I think
question
so.
then?
I
We
think
don't need to
so.
worry about
Mhm.
finding that?
Yeah.
I think we can all go read up on
I think we
Abatement.
table it and rules and.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think 10-18 is where abatement.
thank you.
can be Found at specifically.
Isn't abatement all or none? Do you know?
What I heard from Pennington County is it can be fluid. Well, and it's frustrating because I've got the state law right here where it's transferred from an exempt to a non-exempt, and then you can do taxes for that portion. I don't have the one non-exempt, or the other way, where you abate taxes. I have the one where you start charging them taxes. I don't have the one.
What's the number on that one?
10-4-19.2.
Thank you. Oh, that's one we, or yeah, we pulled up 9.1. Okay.
We've never done anything like this. They've always been paid and then we were given a refund.
Yeah, I mean, my initial
Yeah,
thought is
so
this is
that's-
something to negotiate at the time of purchase, and I mean, with the people you're buying it from and being like, hey, are we paying the taxes or? you
And
know?
that's, I mean, again, my office doesn't really do taxes. We just do assessment. So when those questions do come to us, our advice is always talk to your closing agent.
And this 553602, that's 6 months? So
Are
that's,
you asking about the taxes?
Yeah.
they're requesting about, they've got a valuation of 400, I'm reading upside down, 430,096, and the consolidated tax is 553602, and they're asking 553602. That's 6 months?
I would look it up in the treasurer's office.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll put that over before next meeting. Okay,
Yeah.
I
right.
second the motion to table that Dave had after doing that for a long time. Sorry.
All right, so there's a motion and a second to table. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed? Okay, it's tabled to the next meeting. And we are on to the South Dakota Department of Health contract for WIC, and which expires in a few days.
It'd be all done, yeah.
Thought it already did
We
expire.
almost missed the boat.
I think it's the 30th that it expires.
Yes, that's right. And I noticed on page 65 of the packet that there's one spot where the boilerplate didn't get changed from Lake County to Clay County.
Oh. That's more meaningful than that. I saw somewhere else in here lobbying was
Lobbying.
added as a lobbing. So no
Yeah.
throwing things.
And it
Yep,
was
no lobbying.
Yep.
no lobby.
No,
So
that's
the-
more
Didn't
substantial.
for
The Lake
lobbying.
County, there it is.
Good at lobbying.
It's,
anyway. I've never been a
1.2
shot
I.
putter.
So we did miss, it's 5/31 of this year's, the end date.
Oh,
Subaward period of performance.
that might be the amendment I was looking at.
Well, here,
There are
under,
two,
under that, where the Lake County, it says will end on June 30th, 2024.
Yeah.
that's the one
So
I
there's
saw.
two different,
There's two different
dates.
dates.
Excuse me.
Okay.
They are.
So yeah, 1.2 is so A 1.2 I is where that Lake County language is. Get that fixed.
right under that is June 30th, 2024.
Mhm.
Yep.
Hmm.
It is
So in 5 days.
startling.
Well, I'll move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion?
Ask that we make that amended so we're not paying for Lake County's business. Yep.
Yep. We'll do that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries, and that's just for WIC. We still don't have
Right.
anything for the nurse.
Just wait.
And
Next.
employee holiday change. So this is new language. To be added to the employee handbook. And it seems pretty clear. I think the
We
folks
met,
wor-
as
workshopped it
department
pretty
heads
well.
And discussed it quite a bit. This was what we came up with for a solution. We tossed around, a floating holiday, we tossed around some different ideas, and this was the one that made the most sense to everyone, as far as like Andy's office was concerned as far as the offices like Rhonda's and Lisa's that work really heavily with the state. So, Rhonda had a situation recently where it was a normal business day and the state was down and they couldn't do anything. They couldn't do any motor vehicle at all. And so on a state administrative leave day, that would really limit them to.
Yeah, but the governor's throwing around those leave days like it's an election year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what my thought was too. Maybe it is for her.
And I mean, I know there is that, for what it's worth, most of the counties do have in their handbook that they follow the governor, so.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we have to, but
I noticed in looking through the rest of the packet, did you notice the holiday discussions that were done for the library, Vermillion Public Library?
did not see that.
Yeah, they've got some good thoughts there where they, at this time of year, they put together the holiday schedule for the following year. And, they have a color coded chart on that, and I'd say just take a look at that too, there may be some ideas there that we might want to adopt. I can't express not one right now, but I saw some things there that looked, like it made sense.
Yeah, although, I mean, they're kind of in a different position than
Yeah.
we are in that, it's really on holidays that kids often use kids or families
They've
are
got a
free.
tougher position than we do.
Yeah. And they're not reliant on the state for, to be useful. I mean, I just hate to have employees come to work and not be able to do their jobs because
But for
the
the
state's
benefit of our employees,
absent.
thinking 18 months ahead and having a chart. for the
Yes,
Following years.
I like that.
During budget time is not a terrible idea.
I think it's a great
It
idea.
burns a little time for you, I guess.
No, I think that's a good idea is to announce the holidays ahead instead of voting on them a few weeks before.
And
Mm.
Travis and I don't have to look like such Grinches at that point then.
they've got their holidays and they've got vacation.
Yeah, I know. I understand. And there's administrative leave now too.
Yeah.
Well, then is there a motion to amend the employee handbook?
I'd so move.
I'd second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. And then we have the pay matrix adjustment.
So I was interested that out of that meeting came a consensus that 7% across the board to the pay matrix was the appropriate. So the different offices, because we looked at some pay studies that seemed to show that some were tracking market, some weren't tracking market, but when you guys all met together and talked through it, this is a solution that's.
We did. I mean, it kind of surprised me too, because we all did our own kind of individual pay studies, consulted with other counties and looked at other area agencies and counties and things, and we all kind of came up with that. I think everybody kind of agreed that that would be really an adequate spot to put us.
So is that 7% and plus the 3% cost of
It's
living?
the way
this
it
year
appears
too?
in the budget, right? So, because a lot of salary ones are going up about 10%, right?
That, I think the pay matrix that we proposed had a little note there at the top that it was 7% from this year's pay scale. So it would include the 3%.
It would include the 3%. Okay.
And then just with the encouragement that we kind of continue to do a cost of living adjustment each year that's adequate, even though it may not follow what the state says CPI is.
Mhm.
But not, so this 7%, just to make sure that I'm totally clear, this 7% would include the CPI for 2025 from 2024.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 3+4.
Yep. And then, so when I see the, a lot of the categories, the salary, wages and salary categories were going up in the 10% or ish range, that is people bumping up steps. Okay, gotcha.
And I did prepare the budget with this new pay matrix in mind, so that you guys would have an accurate look at things.
But the idea of addressing it through the wage scale made sense to everybody rather than,
It did, rather than like a longevity resolution, yeah.
yeah.
I like that too.
Yeah,
Simpler.
I liked that. I think Andy's got some comments too.
Cause you're all talking.
Yeah.
She is.
And I will give Andy full credit for coming up with.
You're so brave, Andy.
Went through and adjusted to add the longevity, and he did all the work on
I
that.
thought I would explain that if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Sure.
My understanding was that you folks were looking at a 40 cent an hour raise annually after 20 years. And my point was, why have a different pay scale after 20 years? Let's just extend it out. And so if you look at those steps, we also got rid of some big gaps. There were big leaps where they, no raises for 5 years.
Mm.
And so I did the math and tried to kept them even as they went and filled in those gaps and made it to where somebody that's lands in between right now because of their experience keeps the same pay if it was today, so it isn't like, well, I shouldn't say that. If in the 2024 schedule, right? And so it roughly comes out to be between 80 and 90 cents a step. So again, you're 40 cents roughly per year. The argument against that, which just, full disclosure, I'll say, is that a lot of employers cap their pay. We're not alone in there. I'm not arguing like, hey, let's keep our people down. As an employer, I want to mind my budget, but I also want to take care of my folks. But it's not unusual to have a cap and pay. So if you're looking on the far right of this and say, oh my God, that's a lot of money. Well, that might be why the cap pay, so you're not seeing that, but you might say, well, somebody that stays here that long earns it. So I went out 41 years, which seems absurd, but I just didn't want somebody in the future to go, well, what are we gonna do for so-and-so? Because now she's been here for 35 years and just capped out again. And so hopefully we went into the beyond where anybody would stay. But yeah, somebody that was in their early 20s and got a job in the treasurer auditor's office and stays until they're 65 is gonna use up that whole scale.
And I apologize for not digging into the numbers in a more detailed manner, but so you're saying that each step is generally about 80 or 90 cents ish, somewhere in there.
In
And
the
so
same
it's,
grade, yeah.
so you could say like, it's just a multiple of steps times about 80 or 90 cents goes up across this. It's not an exponential curve where you're saying it's increasing by 3% per step or something like that. Is that right?
It's not 3% on the step before.
Right.
The formula goes back to the base cell in that.
Okay.
It's like, it might be like.
Base cell plus.
1.40, 1.44,
Okay.
it'd be like 3 or 4% higher than. Than the, but it's not compounded on the.
It's not compounded. That's what I'm wondering. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yep.
And that's kind of what I was thinking a week ago when I suggested doing this rather than the resolution that we had. And I noticed when you went to 41 years, very first thing that popped into my mind a few minutes ago, or when I first saw this a couple of days ago, was that, if year 42, you get a gold watch under this. That's it. Yeah, that's it. You're out. We have nothing else for you here. But I do have an old friend and colleague that worked for DANR, the Geological Survey, for 45 years. And crazy old coot, he's out in Rapid City. And by the time he retired, he was making pretty good pay at that time. But I described him as having more titles than a Banana Republic dictator, that from time to time, instead of a raise, he got a new title. And new duties, unfortunately, too. And I did have that trouble a little bit myself. We looked at comparison to people we know, and And the only people we know in the county in our history that stayed that long moved into department head level. Kathy
Yeah.
Powell, for example, she made 40 years, but she was a salaried employee by then. Robin Iverson in the clerk's office, you know, in the courthouse, but not working for the county, was here in the 35 something years. That's a little different, but it could happen. I don't really imagine it would, but it could, that you would have somebody that doesn't run for auditor, treasurer, register of deeds or anything, but just stays right in at that deputy level until they're 65 years old. You know, that would be, if you feel that that is just too much money for that, then that's, you know, that's an argument for why there's a cap.
Yeah.
And you know, but it was presented to us that you wanted to eliminate the cap, so that's why we went Yeah. back and looked at the scale. No, I think this was the right way to go. It's what I had in mind a week ago. It's not drafted to exceed what you folks intended.
We can always amend it, you know, this is something that we have now, and my guess is, you know, first time I talked about this was something like 7 years ago. And probably every 7 to 10 years, we'll probably take another look at this and make sure it still fits.
And the,
We have,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
And if you keep in mind,
Working
the
document.
grades are jobs.
Yeah.
And so someone might come in and say, you know, this position in my office is not adequately compensated. Take the name of the person out of it. That position should be at a different level. Then you just change the grade for the job.
Right.
And then it follows forward based on their experience. I know Michael's strongly considered where a chief deputy state's attorney ought to be in comparison to others. And he determined what grade that would be. And then you look ahead and say, is their stay here longer? Would that be appropriate? And then he did. He found that appropriate grade looking at this. And that would be the right way to do it, instead of say, well, I've got somebody who's been here a long time and I'd like to have them get more money, so I'm gonna change the grade they're in. I don't think that'd be really appropriate by the scale, unless you feel that they're just doing a different job than they were hired in. Maybe you've added duties and literally changed the job.
And often promote, you know, there'll be times where promotions would be appropriate.
Yeah, and promotions is, the sheriff's office is structured that way.
Yeah.
We have different grades. I think all the county offices have a structure of levels of deputies based on experience, training, and certifications. Experience meaning different than longevity. Longevity is steps. The grades are knowledge and skill and things like that.
We've had essentially the same structure since before I started. I don't know when it originally came into play, but it has been adjusted over the years. You know, like Andy said, different positions have, you know, moved grades, and we have adjusted the steps and things over the years. The structure has kind of been the same, but we've adjusted it and amended as we've needed to over the years. So that's really just what we're asking to do again.
And then would the process then in the future be, we would consider what the state tells us the CPI is, and then we would consider what we think is a realistic CPI, and the ask would be that we would just shift the whole matrix. Each of the numbers in there by, you know, 3% if that's.
Generally, what we
ask
do
is,
each year is you take that COLA that we're told to work with, and we add that to the amount in
And that
whatever.
very
It's not
first
like
cell.
E7 or whatever, but consider 1A in the formula and then it fills it in.
Yeah.
But what we feel that we need to consider year going forward is to not be talking about 1%, 2%, and 3% COLAs. And because what happens is then what we do is we come back every 5 or 6 years and go, oh my God, we need to do another salary study because we've fallen so far behind everybody else. Well, everybody else is doing 4 and 5. And so if we do these painful catch-up years and then go back to 1%, 2%, and 3%, we're just gonna be doing it again in a few years. So what we discussed is let's pursue a 4% and 5% COLA, you know, every year if we can. So we're keep up rather than catch up all the time. Cause you know, what we do is we compare ourselves now we're talking about 2025, but we're comparing ourselves to other counties pay in 2024. And so they already are gonna be ahead of us next year, and we're just trying to catch up with them, and they're jumping ahead of us next year. Then the following year, they go another 5% and another 5%, and we go 2 and 3. Then 2 or 3, 5 years from now, we're gonna be talking about it again, about why we're behind again. So, you know, our recommendation is to keep up, and that's what Carrie had mentioned a little earlier. is that-
Unfortunately, the state's allowance for how our budget can grow is
Yeah.
pegged to the state's CPI, so.
Yeah, you only have so much money, we understand that.
Yeah, I mean, the other concern I have is when you get to grade 40, you get out, where are we like 20, at the end of the grid, 41 years. You're at like 158,000
Yeah.
a year.
There's nobody in grade 40.
Yeah.
And so that grade is there for use if somebody was to come in and say, you know what, I think, you know, my deputy needs to be at that pay now. There's nobody higher than 22 until you start talking about attorneys. And so, and the attorneys are higher.
Assistant highway superintendent, deputy, state's
Yep.
attorney, and then there was not on this matrix. I'm the only office that has multiple folks in the courthouse that doesn't have at least a position open for chief deputy. So I'm not saying I would fill it. We felt it was appropriate if we're gonna do this, let's see what other potential roles would occur inside of an office. Certainly in my office, that would be number one. And that's at 38 or 37, I think.
37 is what.
37, although it says 38 here, it would have been 37, so really steps at this moment, 38, 39, and 40 are unused. And everything's really unused from 2024 up, with rare exception.
And then just one other question, you know, you've got grades 1 through 40, no positions below 7. That's just allows us space to add lower paid positions should we need them. Is that right?
Number one's not being used. We eliminated 1 through 9 on the scale from.
Okay, I was just going off the list. So is this not a complete list
I
here?
think the lowest position we have right now is 6 or 7, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but yeah, nobody's in there and, you know, say you hired, you know, somebody to sweep the parking lot and want to pay a minimum wage. You know, we're down.
Gives us space for
We
that.
eliminated 1 through 9 on the old scale because they were below minimum wage.
Yeah.
And that changed the number of everybody's
Gotcha.
scale. Same level, same pay plus 7%, but, the number is different because we got rid of those.
So with this new pay scale, then if you had somebody capped at 20 years like it was, but they've been here 25 or 30, do they automatically go to that then this year?
Previously? Yeah.
No, I mean, right, if we approve this,
This is the new matrix that would.
Yeah, there'll be people that, I know I have some people that, will land higher than they were before. Cause they're sitting at, grade 10, which is 20-year cap, and I've got people at 25 years. And so they would actually.
So they'll just jump to
so
25.
they just jumped to 25, okay.
Yeah.
And you
that's-
can
it's a big
approve
raise.
it effective now or effective the first of the year. I mean.
My
it's-
recommendations first year, we didn't budget for that.
Right.
So. But yeah, there would be some big raises and again, if that's too big, then that's the argument for the cap. But I wouldn't say, no, we're just gonna keep them back there and cost them 5 years and then somebody else comes in and you start them at 21, 22 years and they're already hired and they didn't even work here yesterday.
Right.
I move to approve the new pay matrix.
Okay.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion.
And you said you already ran the budget
Yeah.
with us.
This
okay.
is the budget we're looking at, right? Yep.
Yep.
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I think it's a really good move.
Thank you guys for doing the work on
Mhm.
on hammering it out amongst department heads and.
A lot of going back and forth and of course catching errors and things like that. A lot of weighing in from a lot of people to get us there.
Yeah. We had a very productive.
Ultimately, bring this to you and I think the support will go a long way with the folks that be here now share this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think employment wise, we're living in a different world than we did 10 years ago and
Something we're doing differently, and I think we've all done it, from 10 years ago, well, maybe a little bit more than that, because. You know, I know that Dusty before me saw that entry level is 1, regardless of experience. So when you start working for the county, you start at 1. And you can't hire experienced people when you do that. And when I hired Dave as chief deputy, started out, at that time, 9 was the highest position. Dave started in step 9, knowing he'd never see another raise. And so.
Looking for a comeback, Dave?
Should have stuck it.
Uh-oh, yeah.
And so, but yeah, now we're seeing that, recently with, you know, considering that, I was able to hire a detective, 2 years ago and put him in higher in the scale than 1, because I never would have been able to hire an experienced investigator without the ability to consider their prior experience and pay them for that. So, so now so what that means is then as department heads, we have to decide what their 0 point is.
Yeah.
You know, and so for him, his first day here was 15. And so he goes up from, as if his first day here was his first day at the level 15. Now, that wasn't exact, he has more experience than I had to decide where I'm gonna put him. Because, you know, it isn't all equal. Being a law enforcement officer somewhere else isn't exactly the same as being here. There's still a learning curve. There's still things that they don't know when they come here. And so we determined that would be fair for him. His first year is 15. And so he was already at a point when he started here, if the scale didn't change, where he started and wouldn't get a raise for 5 years, and then he'd get 1 more and he's done.
All right.
Well, I'm glad he came up with a real life example of Dave, you know, other than, I was thinking Columbo or Monk, but then again, those are fictional characters. Yeah, and you know, Carrie mentioned, we've tweaked it over time. It was several years ago, not terribly long ago, we did add step 10. Yeah, which was the 20 years, because it used to cap out at 15 years.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, I did take a good pay cut to go there.
Yeah, I've done that. Even at the top of the scale, he took a big pay cut. I've done that. At the chief deputy
I've done
level,
it too.
top of the scale was still a pay cut. Yeah. But it was well worth it in the long run for me.
It was for me too.
All right. Thank you. And thanks for all the work on this.
Yeah, and I think all of us, department heads collectively, would like to thank all of you for doing what's best to retain our employees. 'Cause we do have some really good ones.
Yeah, and I really feel like the county does a lot with I mean, everybody really pulls their weight. Budget's been cut to the bone repeatedly, and so I think that each person that's with us is doing a lot of work and doing it really efficiently and creating a lot of value for our county, so.
Yeah, that was kind of the biggest surprise I had when I came on the county commission. I mean, I've worked in lots of government organizations and you know, the staff is really outstanding. Works together well and gets it done and
Well, and the experience,
it makes a big difference.
experience with, you know, grant money and things like that. If you've got
There you
experience,
go.
that's saving us money.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the
that's
long
right.
run.
Exactly.
You know, and you got incidents like, you know, Lane's got a lot of experience and you throw this in his lap, all of a sudden, boom, 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 you know, it's taken care of, you know, Andy and you know, all these people that have been here forever. You can't buy that.
Right.
You
Right.
can just try
You
your
can
best.
pay, you
can try your
pay
best.
people fairly.
Yeah.
For that.
And your folks is credit, you know, besides that. You know, I remember back in the day when the raises meant everybody in the county gets $50 a month. Yeah. Everybody, or not. Right. We didn't get raises, and that was across the board. It was a percentage, it was $50 a month was a good raise, if we got it. And some years there weren't, and it was just plain across the board, we were supposed to be pretty thankful for that. And then what they would do is sometimes we had needs and we had to pay for them instead of our raises. There was the 1 year that the deputies were, instead of raises, in lieu of a raise, they were told you could drive a patrol car for personal use. In lieu of a raise. And then another year, we didn't have portable radios and the police department did, and we wanted portable radios. And Dusty said, I could probably get you raises or I could get you portable radios. Which do you want? And so we said, portable radios, because, you know, we thought we were, you know, at risk. With hindsight, I would have said, give me the raise and I'll buy the radio myself. Because, you know, back then you didn't get percentage raises though, so, you know, it doesn't compound, but that's the way it used to be. Essentially, we bought those radios. by not getting raised, and that's the way it used to be, so. We've come a long way, but that's because of the commissions that we've had worked with in more recent decades. And not because, you know, obviously I give our folks a lot of credit, but you folks deserve it because, the changes were changes you made. Well, I still say thank you all.
Mhm. All right, well, moving on, opt-out resolution and budget discussion.
Yes, so we're at that time of year again. Whatever we do for an opt-out has to be done by July 15th. So we're coming down to the deadline. And I know it's always really hard to come up with any kind of educated decision until you have the full budget packet. So I wanted to get that out to you today. A couple days ago, as it were, but so that you had time to actually look it over before you had to have that discussion.
So
And I think all things considered, it actually looks pretty good this year.
Right.
I didn't lose sleep for a week like I did last year, so.
I had a few
Yeah.
questions too, like, so, I know in last year's budget discussion, we talked a lot about, cash reserves, estimated cash balance at the end of the year, and I couldn't remember, and I just neglected to look it up beforehand, but what previously had you liked to see for a percentage, and, what did we end up with last year?
Everybody has their different idea of what they'd like to see at the
Yeah.
end of the year.
Not more than
Mine's
40,
A
yep.
whole lot higher than. We, you know, the state only allows us to max out at 40%. And I like to see us around 30. I know others have said, you know, 20, 25 is a good number, so. Yeah, you know, it's not to say that we're rolling in the dough because we're still looking at a low percentage there, but it's better than I thought it was going to be before I started putting the budget together, so.
I had a couple revenue questions in there. So I was looking at, I didn't see anything that appeared to be income from the new law enforcement center. And is that something that we should be expecting for next year? We've got to,
And
No,
can,
don't.
we can talk about that a little
Be a
bit.
little premature to anticipate that because we don't even know when we're gonna get in there.
Okay.
And obviously, we're gonna get in and get up to speed, and I will basically, you know, put out the vacancy sign the minute we're up and operating, but I don't know when that's gonna be.
But don't
That's
ever
pretty
expect to
good.
make any money from it because he's gonna add a staff as soon as we open.
Yeah, that's
He-
kind of where I was at. when
He
I
needs another
prepared the
jailer.
budget.
right, but if you've got 20 people in there, that's, you know, $360,000 a year or something, right? I mean, it's like, you can, it could be, I don't know what the expected, you know, levels are that we're gonna expect in the board.
My hope is to house 20 inmates. I don't think we're gonna do that on the first day though.
Yeah.
No. And we're gonna wanna train our folks and get good and full before we fill that thing up, but I hope to fill it up. And, you know, to 80% capacity, as soon as we can, and I hope to do that with other counties inmates. But we can always open up the federal government and they'll fill us up too. Yeah.
And
In the meantime, until we get into that building, we still have those ongoing inmate boarding and transportation costs. And we don't have that revenue, so I try to keep that in
yeah,
mind.
I have
when
no
look
issues
at
with
the
being
budgets.
conservative in the the
Yeah,
budget. I think,
no,
that's-
I
I was
just-
just wondering about what the
It's all
expectations
kind of
were
been
there.
predictable.
We haven't.
And we should at least hopefully have a few months of boarding in there to get some idea of maybe trends or something like that, or.
Well, by the time we do our budget, we probably won't be.
Oh, that's right. No, that's true. That's
At
true.
least I
That's true.
know we won't be housing out of county at that point. And
Okay.
we'll be up to speed on what number of staff we have. And so we'll have that figured out.
There'll be some unanticipated costs too.
Yeah.
At the time we move in.
Oh, yeah.
And talked to other sheriffs about housing, you know, I've learned, for example, Lincoln County, although I would like to fill up with Lincoln County inmates, they've got a contract with Minnehaha County that's all or none. So we can't get any Lincoln County inmates down here, so it's gonna be, I hope we keep our relationship with Turner County and take all of theirs and keep all of theirs. And then other than that, it's gonna be ones and twos in here, wherever from other counties that can't find a bed.
Okay.
And Tiffany anticipates even the counties that have jails around us might be putting people with us because Yankton and Union both struggle with female inmates.
Okay.
And the way we designed ours, we can actually go at any point, any ratio we can change.
Yeah, I really like
We
that.
can
That's
hold
good
more women
flexibility.
Than men if necessary, and, you know, she's kind of concerned we might become the female jail in Southeast South Dakota, but if that generates revenue for Clay County, we're all for it.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't cost us anything, who cares?
Yeah, I'm sure that would come with pluses and minuses too.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think the other revenue line that I was wondering about was, I had remembered, Rhonda coming and talking about the, legislation to increase fees for out-of-state, vehicle titling that, and it passed. And when she had been talking about that earlier, it was a pretty substantial revenue bump that they were expecting. Is that projection included in here or not? It didn't seem like it
I
was, but
don't have it included in there yet. I didn't have a good final number from her
Okay.
yet. So before we pass the actual annual budget in, in September.
We'll have
I'll
that
get a
in
better
there.
Number for that.
okay, okay.
So it's
So,
like $50
will help.
per license. right?
100.
Is that what it is? 100, was it?
Yeah.
50.
Oh, 50 to the county. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
So that'll help.
My understanding is those that title out from out of state hardly bat an eye.
Yeah.
They just.
Yep. No, they pay 400 or more than that in other
I don't think
places.
it's gonna cut the number of titles.
Okay, that's good. And her revenue
They're saving a
projections,
lot
when she
more
was,
than that.
yeah, I heard numbers like 150,000 or something possibly coming to us, so.
I did have a constituent call from somebody moved from New Hampshire. And they were complaining about what it cost to title a car in, 2 cars in Clay County for the very first time. And I told them that, boy, in my experience, this is the place to go, that,
Especially if you have a nice car.
maybe you should have moved to Nebraska.
They thought we were high?
It'd be more. Yeah, yeah.
When I moved here.
I may be wrong, but I think, well, I know Montana, when I moved through undergrad, I was still a Montana resident. Then when I became a deputy, I became a South Dakota resident. I had to then, of course, get a license plate on a vehicle I had owned for several years. Montana didn't pay sales tax. when I
That's
purchased
it.
That vehicle. I think New Hampshire is the same way.
Yes.
You have to pay a 4% tax on the valuation of the vehicle on the day that you get it registered, if you're coming from a state that doesn't collect sales tax. I'll leave my own opinions as to that outside of this conversation.
Yes.
But that is, I think New Hampshire is one of those, so hopefully next year.
It's one of about 7 states, and it goes beyond that. Even if the tax is calculated on different basis than South Dakota does. In New Hampshire, it's paid at the local level. And then the local deals with the state. And because of that, I called New Hampshire to check on it.
Yeah.
And because of that, these guys are stuck with paying the full 4% of the value of their vehicle. And it's the value that we get from the NADA, not necessarily what this person paid for it 6 months ago.
Yes.
So. And that all goes to the state, and then if they sell that car, the next buyer also pays the tax. Yes, that's right.
You pay tax on a used car every time it's sold.
Yes.
But the state takes all that, the county can't do anything about it.
Right, right. So, yeah, I've got recent experience in this.
All right, so is this something we need to decide today or?
Need to decide before the 15th of July, so
Okay.
today.
So
July.
next meeting, that's our
So-
last one,
Yeah.
because the next one's the 16th.
And next week's meeting, I won't be here. I'll be on vacation. That is if I'm not helping my sister and nephew recover from the flood. And so Nicole will be here. At this time, I don't have anything else for the agenda except for that tabled abatement application.
Okay.
So.
So that might be a
something
good,
to think about
And
too.
I will be in the Black Hills. However, I'm going to attempt to be at a coffee shop where I can get some internet service and zoom in. So try to attend by Zoom, but computers don't always cooperate.
I think we're gonna have a Boys and Girls Club letter of support that we
Okay.
need to
Consider then.
sign, yeah.
Good.
I wasn't sure if they needed to have that like immediately. Or I did go back and look at that email.
Okay. Sounds like September, they're gonna put the application in, so
Okay.
they were hoping we could just give a verbal maybe
Yeah.
right now.
When I first read the email, I kind of was thinking that, oh, this isn't till fall, so. But yeah, But yeah, we do have to pass that opt-out resolution before the 15th.
All right. And let's see, online building permit discussion. Anybody know?
So are we gonna move on from and then just consider this next week?
Well, unless we
Yeah.
want to talk some more about it.
Well, I think we need to look through it and study the budget individually and come back and with,
All right,
discuss it next time. I think that's the right way to do it anyway.
that sounds good. Yep.
The one thing we are gonna have to add to the budget is another 30,000 for the ambulance every year.
Yeah,
Okay,
You've got it at 40, it's gonna cost us 300,
yeah,
Mm,
and we're already 2 years in, so.
yeah, cause we upped it for the fire support, but not for the ambulance.
Right. Well, we did up it, we just,
Just need to.
it
up it
wasn't
again.
enough.
Go more. Yes,
And then I thought there was one other thing, I can't remember what.
well, there were a couple on there that I highlighted.
yeah,
I knew we didn't know what our public defender contract was gonna look like
Yep.
next year because that's up this year, so. I kind of made
Yeah, it seemed,
a guess there.
a wag.
Yep. Made a guess on that one. We don't have the 911 budget request yet, but I know there will be, it's contract negotiation for the union, so I know that there will be some, payroll items there, so kind of estimated that one, knowing that I was probably a little high and maybe would adjust that back down. So. Hopefully some of those things will help balance out the ambulance, because I did not increase that the extra 30,000. I did what we had on our schedule.
What else?
All right. So the last thing I have is the online building permit discussion.
Oh, and I think, I also have one other item I just wanted to mention on Clay County, not at the top of the
Okay.
agenda, so I don't know what order they go, but.
Yep.
Yeah, Clay County Parks later. Okay, online building permit discussion. So I wanted to put this on the agenda because I went to the district meeting up in Freeman. And the presenter was. Oh, well, it was a representative from the District
Andy?
3.
I had one question for. Sorry.
You can go ahead if you'd like to.
Just a second, Andy, excuse me,
Good Lord.
the disbursement reports. There's 3 there and it must be for 3 different months and they're all show that they're for May. Take a look, just take a look. Check on that. There's different
Is
numbers
there-
on the.
They
3
should
different-
be May.
Yeah,
You get them for the month prior.
there are 3 different,
Yeah, there's.
There are-
there are 3 different reports that he
Every dime I
runs.
receive in May.
Yeah.
And then every dime I disperse in May.
Yeah.
And then every dime I disperse specifically to the treasurer, because that was a Phyllis request. She wants to know how much money.
Gotcha, okay,
And so,
sorry,
does that
Didn't
make
mean to-
sense? And so then in July, you'll see June's numbers. And
understood.
yeah, and I remember Ralph Westgard said, well, you lost money this month. Well, the money I receive in May, I disperse in June.
Yes,
So, basically June 1st, I'll disperse all the revenue that we collected for the county to the treasurer after the end of the month. So the money you see dispersed won't match the amount of money you receive because they're offset by 1 month.
yeah,
But it's everything we dispersed in that month and everything we received in that month.
okay, yeah, I just thought, I ought to ask about this because there's an easy explanation for it, but I just don't know it
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
There's
and-
just 2 disbursement reports and 1 income report.
It's about once every 2 or 3 years, anybody ever asks about that.
Yeah.
But I can always go through it even, item by item if you ever want. Sometimes the question might be, well, what's that mean? And
Yeah,
I can tell you that. but-
yeah. No, it's pretty straightforward, other than having the treasurer's report versus the report to the treasurers versus the other one.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
they
the
were
one of them-
different.
The one of them is a lot greater because that might include bond money that we
Yes.
collected, and gave to the clerk of courts. Or when we collected judgment for some private citizen or a collection agency, I disperse that to that person. Well, that doesn't go to the treasurer. But
Yeah.
we might have fees on that same action that goes to the treasurer. And that's county's money.
Sure.
And so, Phyllis, I thought it was a valid question that had asked, hey, we don't really care about what you send to the clerk of court's office in bonds that you collect, but we want to know what kind of revenue you're collecting for the county. And that's that number. And so when you see that dispersed to the treasurer, that's county revenue. Other than 24/7. You know, that goes to the treasurer, but that's held separately and used to fund the 24/7 project. The rest of it goes back to the general fund.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Any question anytime, just let me know.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Andy. So online bill.
Yes, yep, and actually I realized I should have probably said online permit discussion because the presenter, I looked up my notes here, the presenter was Harry Redmond. He's a representative of the District 3 Planning District. And their COG, their planning district, built a online permitting system, which Yankton County has now been using for 5 years. So you go to the Yankton County website, you click through because you want to get a building permit or you want to get a conditional use permit. And it's got a system where you sitting at home at night, not during business hours, can submit your application. He says contractors love it. He says it streamlines things. In conversations I've had with Drew, he says that's the main part of his day is sitting at a table and walking somebody through filling out paperwork. This would automate that process. It pops out. I mean, this presenter was showing us the back end of it. It pops out reports that, based on my interactions with Drew, I think he'd have no trouble handling that data and manipulating that data. It also can be integrated with a free email automated system that kicks out a email receipt with like a request and an invoice for the building permit fee automatically to the person's email that they put in there. It just seemed like a huge time saver. It's integrated with ArcGIS. So so in the permit, there's a live map that would be, based on our EcoView photos where you say, well, where's the structure going to go? And you tap a button on exactly where it's going. If that's within a setback, that'd be problematic. It pops up, oh, a red flag. This appears to be within the setback of your neighbor's property. Might not be an okay location for this. Drew's work would be, I think, streamlined by this. It sounds amazing and it sounds really expensive, but it's free. District 3 said that counties outside of District 3, because they've already built the software, we'd have to have staff to handle the back end of it. But this is something that we could begin a discussion with having this, and they said they would not charge us for this piece of software.
I read about that a few months ago and I thought, yeah, this does look good. I'm glad Yankton County's the beta testers. And if it works out well in after a year or so.
They're 5 years in.
Yeah, I'd sure be interested in it.
Yeah, and so I thought Gary Vetter said that he'd be open to answering questions about how it's working for their office. And I thought maybe what we should do as a next step is consider inviting him to maybe Zoom into a meeting and give a walkthrough for everybody else. Cause I don't believe anybody else was up there. So I don't think anybody else saw the demo, but
No, I haven't seen their demo, but I have read about it a couple of times. That it sounds like a pretty good system.
So this meeting has already gone way too long. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't forget to introduce that to you guys. And if people are interested in it, if you'd like me to reach out to Gary and ask him if he'd be willing to come talk to us about this, or possibly somebody from District 3, I'd be happy to take that next step if others are interested at all.
I think
it's
an interesting idea.
And it's something that, can be integrated with the other offices as well and can kind of tie some things together and hopefully save some labor. So.
Sounds good. Any other Clay County Park? Something?
There is one other thing for Clay County Park discussion. So this is very early, but I wanted to make sure that everybody's aware very early. So the playground down there has been there for a long time, and the park board has some concerns about liability issues that it may be due for an upgrade. And so the park board is beginning the process of trying to get an idea of grants that might be available to assist with construction, cost of doing something different down there. But that's a discussion that's begun, and I wanted to make sure that the commission was aware that that's something that the park board is beginning to look at. But it'll be a bit of a process, and I'll give you guys updates as soon as we have any. But that was all there. So
Anything else?
building?
Tomorrow, we have the
Popping up.
topping.
And I won't be able to
9:30.
go. I have a doctor's appointment at that time, actually.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be uneventful.
Yeah.
And everything, schedule wise, we're still where we're at, still expecting? No,
No,
Held
we
back.
have no idea where that schedule's at. I've been getting,
Okay.
I need to give those emails to Carrie. They've already given us two 7-day extensions. That was part of the contract because of the weather.
Yeah.
So we have
Okay.
no idea where we're at yet.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that June 1st move-in day, throw that out
Right.
and.
They're still saying November because that is their day they have to be done. So
Gotcha.
they'll never, they're never gonna say June.
All right, and anything on joint jurisdiction?
Meeting on Thursday it's Thursday evening. So nothing now. hopefully
Okay.
Next time.
All right. And no executive session?
We do have one executive
Yeah.
session matter.
I just want to ask a point of clarity, not to dig anything up. Going, just circling back, I know the question I'm gonna get asked is, with this administrative leave, how does that affect the 5th of July? I missed the first discussion, I wasn't here for that. But is there clarity on that I just don't understand?
Did we move to start it? Next year?
Are we making it effective
So that wasn't clear. You just-
immediately?
That's true, we
next
did, didn't
year?
we? Yeah.
No, you guys
That's a
only
good
just-
question.
Well,
I
Dick
didn't
brought up
think that.
18 months,
Yeah.
but they had time to think about it. So I guess I didn't think it was gonna be immediate.
Yeah, I just wanted clarity, because I know that's gonna be the question.
Yeah, I had thought that was for next year, but I guess I
I
didn't
was
think through
thinking
that
in
very
terms
clearly,
of
so.
next
yeah.
year. but
Effective-
That's the
effective
reason,
next
that's the
year.
reason to think in terms of how the library is doing it, so that they have a
Yep.
firm schedule 6 months before the calendar year starts.
Yeah, no, but
You know, I tossed it your way before, I also didn't think about it, I think we were all on the same page, but it's been a while, I was like, oh, okay.
It has been a while.
Good question I get asked, and I'm not gonna know if I actually have clarity on that.
I think next year.
Perfect.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Move to go into executive session for personnel? Is that what it is?
Second,
Personnel and
oh,
contract.
And contract.
all right, I'll still second it.
All right. So motion to go into executive session in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
They're recording.
Now we're good?
Yep.
Move to come out of executive session.
Second.
It's a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
How about the placement of this desk? What do you think?
You should go that way.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Just scoot it either straight out or rotate this way?
Even straight out should be fine.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, if you even,
as long as we're okay with space on that end.
Oh, yeah.
it should be,
things.
Of course, it got hot enough down here, leaning up against this cold pillar.
Yeah, you know, I
It's so
suppose
bad.
that feels good. You can always back into it.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
I don't know, was it just me or was it getting hot in here?
It's very hot, and actually,
Hot,
is the
yes.
AC functioning again? I was out of the office for
I
a
think
couple of
it's
days.
cool enough, but the
is.
humidity's pretty high. I think
Yeah,
it's
so
just-
are the fans not working?
This room though, never had AC. Scott had them tap into a vent over here somewhere, so it doesn't have like full capacity AC at all. It's just, it's what we could manage, basically.
So when we remodel the safety center,
Yes.
we need to fix this problem.
Yeah, that's a return air there, and these should be.
That one looks like
HDM
it's closed.
vents
That one's
there.
open. Maybe we need to pop this one open a little.
I know when they kicked that one on, that thing was loud.
That's-
Whatever behind it.
That should be a return air there. That's what sucks air out of here.
Which is supposed to be at the floor. Anyway,
All right.
move to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, there's a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all for making it through a long meeting here. That was.
Wow.